Chapter 434. Bai Chen's breakdown. Ever since clearing the 3-star Master Teacher examination 7 years ago and becoming an elder of the Xianyuan Kingdom Master Teacher Pavilion, Bai Chen had been well respected no matter where he went. Even the Xianyuan Kingdom royal family had to welcome him with the grandest of formalities. If a 2-star Master Teacher were to show the slightest disrespect to him, he would immediately bellow at the other party, and the other party wouldn't even breathe loudly out of fear. Yet, this fellow actually told him to scram. Bai Chen's eyes narrowed. Is there something wrong with your head? How dare you ask me to scram? Unforgivable. Boom! His aura abruptly burst out. Master Teachers, due to their state of insight and their deep understanding of cultivation techniques and battle techniques, tended to be the strongest among all of the other occupations. Even among Zhizuan realm pinnacle cultivators, Bai Chen definitely ranked among the top. Even though his name wasn't listed in the Green Leaf Board, he was, without a doubt, one of the top figures within this kingdom. Yet, such an expert was insulted by a mere 2-star Master Teacher. How could he tolerate such humiliation? With a livid expression, the might of a Zhizuan realm pinnacle came gushing out as though a massive torrent. Kacha! Kacha! Unable to take the pressure, cracks appeared on the stairs beneath his feet. You were scared into hiding in the Master Teacher Pavilion because of this fellow? Taking this sight in, Luo Qianhong shook his head. He thought that the Master Teacher who struck so much fear in the Crown Prince, who was ranked first in the Young Leaf Board, that he was sent into hiding would be an incredible fellow, but from the looks of it, the other party seemed to be a fool. Putting aside how he walked in so openly to wreak havoc on such a major affair, he even dared to spout such rude words to a 3-star Master Teacher. Even the word fool was insufficient to describe him. This wasn't Tianwu Kingdom, where a 2-star Master Teacher could reign mighty. Here, even a 3-star primary Master Teacher would have to lie low. Given the innumerable rules of the Master Teacher Pavilion, just by picking a few, one could condemn a lower-ranked Master Teacher to the pits of hell. I must be blind as well, Ding Mu uttered awkwardly. Back then, Zhang Xian had used a mystical treasure to crush Liang Qingming and Lin Long, and the sight of it was a huge shock to him. That was why he escaped immediately then. After which, fearing that the other party would mobilize the help of his teacher, the unfathomable Yang Shi, he decisively chose to go into hiding. Yet, contrary to his expectations, the other party came alone. If Yang Shi was here, Ding Mu might still be frightened. But a 2-star Master Teacher, honestly speaking, meant nothing to him at all. It wasn't because Master Teachers meant nothing at all. Rather, even though a 2-star Master Teacher was a huge asset to a Tier 1 kingdom, to a conferred kingdom, it just wasn't that important. To charge here instead of resolving the issue at the Master Teacher Pavilion, that's a lack of rationality. On top of that, despite being a junior, he dares to talk back to a 3-star Master Teacher. That's a lack of respect. Furthermore, despite being the civilian of a vassal state, he dares disregards the emperor. That's a lack of patriotism. Lack of rationality, respect, and patriotism. Just with these 3, we can revoke his Master Teacher license. Luo Qianhong shook his head as the disdain in his eyes deepened. Even so, given how he dared to provoke Bai Shi, there's probably no need to revoke his license anymore. Nodding his head, Ding Mu's lips slowly curled up. Of course. Putting his hands behind his back, Luo Qianhong exuded an authoritative disposition as he said, Not only do we need to teach him a good lesson, it's also about time to reorganize the Master Teacher Pavilions of those vassal Tier 1 kingdoms. Otherwise, if even trash like him can become a Master Teacher, how can the prestige of Master Teachers be upheld? You're right. It's about time for some reorganization. Nodding his head, Ding Mu was just about to speak when his eyes lit up. Look, Bai Shi is making a move. Not too far away, Bai Chen spread open his fingers, and leaving a huge gale of wind behind him, he dashed forward to claw at Zhang Xian. An expert pulls his weight as soon as he makes a move. With the strength of a Zhizuan realm pinnacle, a towering pressure came crashing down on Zhang Xian. Even before his blow could reach, the stairs beneath him were already cracking from the immense shock wave. Bai Chen's Great Reversal Hands is a phantom battle technique, and it possesses immense strength. Back then, when he was still at Jizuan Realm Advanced Stage, he managed to subdue the Jizuan Realm Pinnacle Zhou Tian with a single palm. This fellow is probably in for misfortune, Luo Qianhong commented. The intruding master teacher had a frightening aura shrouding around him, and he seemed to possess the strength of a Jizuan Realm Pinnacle. However, through his acute discerning ability as a 3-star intermediate master teacher, Luo Qianhong could tell that the other party was only at Jizuan Realm Primary Stage. Even if he utilized some physical body cultivation technique to boost his physical strength, what about it? In the end, a strong physical body amounts to mere brute strength. One couldn't execute the full might of battle techniques through mere brute strength. When faced with an expert, the other party would surely crumble quickly. Just as the duo was giving their comments on the battle, Bai Chen's palm was already right before Zhang Xian. Humph! Not expecting that a master teacher would attack him straight without even trying to understand the situation, Zhang Xian's complexion darkened. Harumphing coldly, lines of insight surfaced in his eyes. In that instant, it was as though the other party's movements had slowed. The gaps and flaws in his movements suddenly seemed to magnify, becoming clear to Zhang Xian's eyes. Thus, Zhang Xian slightly tilted his body to the side before sending a kick right at the other party's ankle. What? Bai Chen had wanted to cripple this arrogant 2-star master teacher to serve as a warning to the rest against disrespecting him, but upon seeing the other party's kick, his face paled. His Great Reversal Hands was powerful, and it would be difficult for even those of the same cultivation realm to withstand his blow. However, no matter how powerful it was, there were still flaws to it. Zhang Xian's kick was aimed right at the center of where his jinqi was gathered. Once struck, no matter how weak the other party's kick was, he would immediately suffer a rebound and sustain severe internal injuries. Having the flaw of his ultimate technique seen through in an instant, Bai Chen felt so stifled that blood was threatening to spurt from his mouth. At this moment, he could no longer be bothered with offense anymore. After all, once the other party's kick lands, not only would his attack be rendered ineffective, he would also be crippled. Thus, he hurriedly exerted all of his force on his feet and leaped backward. Even so, forcefully retracting his strength in the midst of an attack and leaping backward had caused the jinqi flowing through his body to go into chaos. A sweet sensation welled in his throat, and a mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. Damn it! Even before crossing blows with the other party, Bai Chen was already injured. He couldn't help but feel frenzied. As a master teacher, his discernment and knowledge far exceeded that of ordinary cultivators. When had he suffered such a humiliation? Damn you! Bellowing furiously, Bai Chen shot out 2 fists simultaneously. His fists felt as fleeting as the wind, but undeniably, if it were to land on one would be crippled if not dead. Phantom battle technique, consecutive breezy fist. In terms of burst strength, this technique was not a match for the Great Reversal Hands. However, the execution of this technique was much faster, and its reach was significantly greater as well. There weren't many obvious flaws to it, so the other party shouldn't be able to do the same as he did before. With a savage expression, Bai Chen howled furiously. However, just as before his fist could reach the young man before him, the other party's foot appeared in his sight once more. Upon seeing the area that the kick was aimed at, Bai Chen coughed another mouthful of blood again. He was already on the verge of tears by now. Helpless, he could only hurriedly retract his offense. The consecutive breezy fist was a well-known battle technique in the Master Teacher Pavilion, and it was said to be the creation of a 4-star master teacher. Its swift movement left very few flaws for one's opponent to exploit, and even Pavilion Master Luo Qianhong would have to take on this battle technique squarely. Yet this fellow sent a leg straight at the opening of the battle technique without any hesitation. If the kick were to really land on him, even if he survived this blow, he would surely be lying on the bed for months. For 2 consecutive kicks to land on the flaw of his battle techniques. Was this fellow's eye for discernment really that incredible, or was it just a coincidence? I don't believe it! Howling furiously yet again, he flicked his wrist and a long saber appeared in his hands. He slashed the saber art furiously, and in the blink of an eye, after images appeared. Phantom Battle Technique, Saber of Sorrowful Departure. The Saber of Sorrowful Departure consisted of 64 moves, and the movements connected with one another, allowing one to launch a continued offense against one's enemy to push the other party into a corner. Unless one possessed an even more powerful weapon and battle technique, it would be impossible to withstand this swift saber art. Hoo hoo hoo! With the saber flying all around the place, Bai Chen didn't think that the other party would be able to find the weakness in this move. However, just as this thought appeared in his mind, the other party's foot appeared in a momentary gap in the movements of the saber art yet again, headed straight for his Mingnan. Pooh! Bai Chen hurriedly retracted his saber and backed away. Once again, the sudden withdrawal of force caused his face to redden and fresh blood spurted out of his mouth. 3 consecutive phantom battle techniques consisting of palm, fist, and saber, and Bai Chen only ended up injuring himself. He was about to go insane. Wasn't this fellow only a 2-star master teacher? To see through the flaws in the battle techniques of a Jizuan realm pinnacle expert with a single look. When did 2-star master teachers become so formidable? If even 2-star master teachers were that formidable, then what did he, a 3-star master teacher, count as? Bai Chen felt more and more stifled as he fought on, and he was on the verge of going insane. The crowd watching the commotion by the sides stared at one another frenziedly. The two were both Jizuan realm experts, and on top of that, they were both master teachers. As such, their movements were extremely fast. On top of that, with their eye of discernment, more often than not, they could tell the other party's attacking trajectory and deduce the outcome before the attack even lands, and through that, determine their next movement. In other words, the Bai Shi who had just furiously declared that he would teach his foreigner a lesson, in the eyes of the crowd, leaped backward as soon as the other party lifted his legs on the 3 occasions, and on top of that, he even spurted a mouthful of blood each time. The heck? Do you think that you're a clown in the circus? Why does it feel that Bai Shi is even more unreliable than the person who came to wreak Crown Prince Ding Mu's inauguration ceremony? Is Bai Shi dancing? It does look like it, some spectators amidst the crowd commented. As soon as the young man raised his leg, Bai Shi would jump backward. It was as though a human was toying with his own dog, and at the same time, it resembled a dancing couple as well. You advance while I retreat, and an occasional spurting of blood for a touch of intimacy. Didn't you furiously declare that you would kill the other party? To be jumping around the area. Are you sure you aren't flirting with the other party instead? No one does it the way you do. Pooh! 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 Bai Chen was already severely injured before, but after hearing those words and seeing the bizarre gazes in the crowd's eyes, he nearly failed to catch his breath and fainted on the spot. Dancing. Dance your head. You're the one who is dancing, your whole family is dancing. It only appears that way due to my battle techniques being completely suppressed by the other party's movements. The more he thought about it, the more furious Bai Chen became. As a 3-star master teacher, a prestigious and respected figure in Xianyuan Kingdom, even if he were to win against the other party now, he would surely become a laughingstock. Today, it'll be either you die or I die. Roaring furiously, he whipped the saber around once more. His saber gleamed, as though creating a spherical light force field around him. With such a swift saber art, even if a pail of water were to be splashed over one would be able to completely deflect it. Just as he thought that the other party would be completely helpless before this technique, he lowered his head, only to see a foot leisurely being stretched over toward him. Just as the several times before, it shot straight through the gaps in the saber art. The heck? What the heck is this? How in the world can you know the flaws of every single battle technique I display? Did you study all of my battle techniques before coming? Is there a point to this? Can't we have a hot-blooded and valiant fight? To strike so mercilessly at my flaws, don't you know what love and concern for one's elders is? Bai Chen cried. Chapter 435. The night rain drenches every traveling downstream. No, that's not it. This fellow seems rather skilled. Luo Qianhong said with a grim expression. The inexperienced spectates the commotion while the veteran analyzes the technicalities. Bai Chen's jumping around and occasional spurting of blood may look ridiculous in the eyes of others, but Luo Qianhong was still able to discern something about the situation. Clearly, the young man's kick had posed a huge threat to his old friend, impelling him to back away even despite the threat of a rebound occurring. In other words, that fellow had seen through the flaws of Bai Chen's movements and struck directly at its openings. That was why he was able to neutralize his attacks so easily, putting Bai Chen in such a difficult position. It can't be that. He knew that Bai Shi would make a move, so he decided to study his battle techniques and cultivation techniques in advance? Ding Mu could also roughly tell what was happening, so he couldn't help but comment in astonishment. Study in advance? That's impossible. There is no cultivator who would reveal all of his cultivation techniques and battle techniques to others, even to his closest kin in case his enemies found out about it through certain means. Luo Qianhong shook his head. I know of Bai Chen's great reversal hands, but he has never utilized the consecutive breezy fists and saber of sorrowful departure before anyone, so even I am unaware of it. How could a foreigner find out about such confidential secrets beforehand? That. Ding Mu's face paled. He suddenly recalled the various legends of that young master teacher. Back then, he didn't think much of it. He attributed it all to the other party having a good teacher. However, from the looks of it, he was vastly underestimating the other party. Most probably, he might have cultivated or studied these battle techniques before, thus granting him some knowledge of its flaws. Luo Qianhong deduced. Then, he turned to look at the Crown Prince and said, Are you hiding something from me? Is that person really just an ordinary 2-star primary master teacher? The other party had only told him that he offended a master teacher of a Tier 1 kingdom. Since the other party was just a 2-star master teacher of a vassal kingdom, he didn't think much of it, so he didn't investigate the matter. To think that this negligence would result in such a huge problem. When that fellow bellowed on top of the savage beast, Luo Qianhong thought that the other party was an ignorant, reckless fellow. Even if he was talented, given his young age, he should not pose a threat at all. However, after seeing all that had happened, he couldn't say the same about it now. An ordinary 2-star master teacher seeing through the flaws in the battle techniques of a 3-star master teacher in an instant? Without a doubt, Ding Mu must have misled him. Under the other party's interrogation, Ding Mu clenched his fists tightly and said, I don't know much about him either, just that. It has only been 10 days since he became a 2-star master teacher. 10 days? Luo Qianhong frowned. Logically speaking, a 2-star master teacher who had just passed the examination shouldn't be so formidable? Pun! Luo Qianhong was baffled. However, before he could make sense of the situation, the sound of a foot sinking into flesh sounded. He hurriedly turned around, only to see Bai Chen, unable to dodge any longer, being kicked in the face and flying 40 to 50 meters back. His head smashed into the wall of a building, and the immense force caused him to pass out. After being forced to withdraw his battle techniques halfway through executing them, he had already suffered significant damage via the rebound of his strength. Unable to withstand this humiliation, the thought of dying with the other party flashed through his head and he decided to go all out. Yet, it ended up being a one-sided event. Bai Shi was sent flying with a single kick? How is that young lad so strong? Didn't they say that the Crown Prince is the greatest genius in Xianyuan Kingdom? The other party defeated Bai Shi despite being under 20. Doesn't this mean that he's even more talented? Not one person in the crowd was able to make sense of the dancing previously, and now, Bai Chen had been kicked unconscious. No matter how foolish they were, it couldn't be more apparent now that the other party's strength surpassed even that of the 3-star primary Bai Shi. The crowd stared at one another blankly. Walala! While everyone was overwhelmed with shock, the young man continued walking up the stairs, closing the distance to the Crown Prince. Upon seeing this sight, the soldiers in the surroundings immediately advanced forward to protect their liege. Wait a moment! Seeing that Ding Mu intended to have his guards make a move, Luo Qianhong shook his hands to wave them away. Pavilion Master Luo. Thinking that the other party was going to betray him, Ding Mu looked at him worriedly. I'll help you reconcile with him. It'll be best to end this matter peacefully. Luo Qianhong was angry that Ding Mu didn't tell him the truth, but he was indebted to the Xianyuan royal family, and this was a debt he had to repay. Besides, it was already too late to back out of it. Thus, he could only face it straight on. I'll be depending on Pavilion Master Luo then. Ding Mu nodded. Continue on with your ceremony and make haste. As long as you become the emperor and the royal seal is in your hands, things will become easier to settle. I'll also be in a better position to speak up for you, Luo Qianhong said. Yes. Ding Mu nodded as he hurriedly walked toward the throne in the center. Upon seeing him being bestowed the crown and undergoing the final rites, Luo Qianhong heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he turned around to face Zhang Xian. Looking at the guards by the side who already had their weapon drawn, he commanded, Clear away! Pavilion Master Luo! Knowing the other party's identity, the soldiers hurriedly opened up a pathway and bowed. You must be Zhang Xian, Zhang Shi. I am the head of the Xianyuan Kingdom Master Teacher Pavilion, Luo Qianhong. Walking forward, Luo Qianhong clasped his fist. Even though I am not aware of the grudge between you and Ding Mu, it's always better to make comrades than enemies. Since we're both master teachers, allow me to play the role of a mediator to resolve the conflict between the both of you. No matter what you request, I'll have Ding Mu prepare it. The only thing I want is Ding Mu's life. As soon as I get that, I'll leave. Zhang Xian spoke impassively. What compensation could match the life of his student? Not only is Ding Mu the crown prince, he's also about to become the emperor of Xianyuan Kingdom. If he were to be killed, it'll surely cause chaos in the country. The population will suffer. There's no master-teacher pavilion that could watch idly as all of these unfold. If this matter blows up, you might even end up losing your identity as a master-teacher. Luo Qianhong frowned. Scram! While Luo Qianhong spoke, the ceremony was still going on. It was clear that he was trying to stall for time. Zhang Xian's complexion immediately darkened. The only reason I am hesitating to make a move on you is due to your immense talent. Don't you try to overstep your boundaries. Luo Qianhong harumphed. I am already trying to spare your pride. So what if you are a genius? Do you think that I, as a 3-star intermediate master teacher and a half-transcension expert, would fear you? If you don't scram, I'll leave you in the same state as that fellow. Seeing that Luo Qianhong was still stalling for time, Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up. Without any hesitation, his figure immediately blurred. Who? He disappeared from the spot, and in the blink of an eye, he leaped several dozen meters forward, appearing right before the other party. Heaven's Path Movement Art. When Zhang Xian was fighting with Bai Qin, he didn't utilize any of the Heaven's Path battle technique. It was just to add in the element of surprise when he was facing a stronger enemy. Otherwise, once his ultimate techniques were revealed, the enemy could take precautions against them. If so, the effectiveness of the techniques would be minimized. Reaching Jizun realm, the Heaven's Path Jinqi became purer and more concentrated. As such, the speed and distance of the Heaven's Path movement art had increased significantly. Even Luo Qianhong, as a half-transcension expert, was incapable of moving at such speed. Before he could even react, Zhang Xian was already right before him. You! Luo Qianhong's eyes narrowed and he hurriedly tried to retreat. However, before he could even take a single step back, a fist slowly magnified right before him. Heaven's Path Fist Art. The speed of the fist was in no way slower than the movement art, and in fact, it might even have exceeded the latter. A sonic boom resounded deafeningly on top of the heaven's altar. Knowing that it was impossible for him to dodge already, Luo Qianhong propelled the Jinqi in his body and sent a fist of his own to face the other party's blow. Boom! Both fists collided, and Luo Qianhong felt his palm turning numb. His face paled, and he had to take 8 steps backward consecutively before he managed to steady his figure. In order to ward off the rampaging might of the other party, his feet sank 3 inches into the ground. Even a layer of granite on the incomparably resilient ground of the Heaven's Altar was reduced to dust under the powerful shock wave. What a powerful fist art! A sharp pain came striking Luo Qianhong's shaking arm. In that clash, he could tell that even though the other party possessed massive strength, he was still a way off from matching up to a half-transcension like him. What a truly fearsome fist art that was! It was aligned with the world, and to Luo Qianhong's shock, he realized that there were absolutely no flaws he could exploit. Under this abrupt encounter, even a 3-star intermediate master teacher like him ended up suffering a setback. Taking a deep breath, Luo Qianhong suppressed his chaotic breathing, and raising his palms, he charged ahead. The fact that the other party had forced him back had embarrassed him. He mustn't allow the other party to take the initiative once more. Boom! The jinqi of a half-transcension expert gushed out, creating a river on the Heaven's Altar. In an instant, it felt as though the air had turned viscous. Fighters cultivate their own bodies to bring out the full strength of their physical bodies and jinqi. The cultivation of a mortal transcendent expert was very different from that. True mortal transcendent experts were capable of utilizing origin energy from their surroundings to display a battle prowess several folds of their own strength. Using the words from Shang Xian's previous world, if fighters fought with their own fists and flesh, mortal transcendence would be equivalent to using robots and external equipment. There was no basis for comparison for the two. How could a bare-handed martial artist defeat tanks and cannons? At half-transcension, one wasn't able to fully utilize the strength of nature yet, but still, one was still able to unleash a might far exceeding that of the 40,000 ding limit of Zhizun realm pinnacle experts. In fact, even Zhang Xian's 50,000 ding was insignificant compared to the other party. With the full might of a half-transcension expert unleashed, Luo Qianhong gained control of the surroundings. Then, harumphing softly, he dashed forward and struck Zhang Xian with his palm. Phantom Pinnacle Battle Technique, Whisking Sleeves. The warm breeze whisks Willow tugging one's sleeves. The night rain drenches every traveling downstream. This gentle palm seemed to hold no weight to it, but having gathered an immense amount of the surrounding origin energy, it was capable of breaking through even steel and phantom equipment. A half-transcension expert coupled with a phantom pinnacle battle technique was a frightening force. Even an expert of the same level would find it hard to withstand the immense might. With this move, Luo Qianhong had taken out nearly all of his aces. So, the palm flew straight toward the young man with frightening speed, threatening to land at any moment. However, not only did the other party not dodge or evade, he even dashed straight toward the palm. This is bad. The Whisking Sleeves was a very flexible battle technique, making it hard for someone to withstand its might. But even so, there was still one major flaw to it: the stream. And this fellow happened to be standing right at the location of the stream. To determine its flaws and find the location precisely in that short moment. How was that possible? In that instant, Luo Qianhong's shock was indescribable. Chapter 436 Expelling an Army with Words 1. Formidable! On the back of the savage beast, Gongzi and the others, who had just arrived, caught the sight, and even Jin Sohai couldn't help but exclaim. He's indeed formidable to be able to see through the flaw of the attack in an instant. Charging straight into the eye of the storm to tie through the barrage. To do that, just possessing an exceptional eye of discernment wouldn't be sufficient. More importantly, one has to have great mental fortitude. Gongzi nodded in agreement as well. Most probably, even this Luo Qianhong will lose. However, there are many troops in this Xianyuan royal palace, and no matter how powerful Zhang Xian is, he is still an individual. It'll be impossible for him to withstand the might of a country. What should we do? Should we help him? Jin Sohai asked hesitantly. He must have realized this problem as well. The reason why he asked for Gu Mu's assistance is probably to ward off these soldiers, Gongzi said. Of the many occupations, master teachers possess the strongest individual offensive power. However, in terms of facing multiple enemies at once, poison masters reigned supreme. With a sufficient poison stockpile, it was futile no matter how many enemies charged at a poison master. That should be so, Jin Sohai nodded in agreement. Let's not rush in first. Given how this young two-star master teacher managed to see through the flaws in the battle technique in a half-transcension expert in an instant, his eye of discernment and knowledge are indeed incredible. If he wishes for someone's assistance, he would have already rendered Yang Shi's help. Since he didn't do so, he probably wishes to do the deed alone. We'll only go in when he's unable to hold on anymore. Gonzi chuckled. Yes. Jin Songhai nodded. Then, looking at the sight below, his eyebrows shot up. Luo Qianhong has lost. As Jin Songhai spoke, on the heaven's altar, Zhang Xian had dived out from the stream and struck the other party's chest with his elbow. Pun! Struck with immense brute strength, Luo Qianhong's face warped together. He was immediately sent flying, crashing heavily onto the ground. The head of the Master Teacher Pavilion, a 3-star intermediate Master Teacher, a half-transcension expert on the 3rd place on the green leaf board, was defeated in just a few breaths. The crowd flew into an uproar. All along, Luo Qianhong was a figure synonymous with invincible in their hearts, and he possessed innumerable fans. They thought that he would surely be able to defeat that young lad, who wasn't even 20 yet, easily. However, the one who was defeated turned out to be Luo Qianhong himself. Not to mention, he was utterly crushed. On the top of the green leaf pavilion, Elder Liao Qingxuan subconsciously asked, Pavilion head, does the 1st place on the young leaf board still belong to Crown Prince Dingmu? Dingmu? Nonsense! Of course it's that Master Teacher Zhang Xian. How can the two of them be compared with each other? You must be pulling my leg, Pavilion head Dai Feng said. But you just said that there was no one who could match Crown Prince Dingmu in the past 500 years, and it would be like that for the next 500. Elder Liao Qingxuan asked in bewilderment. It was just a moment ago that the other party praised the Crown Prince up to the stars. Why did he suddenly change his tune for another person? Wasn't this way too fast? Did I say that? Elder Liao, let's not bother about such unnecessary matters. Hurry up and send some men to look into that young man's background. Having his lapse in judgment exposed, Pavilion head Dai Feng's face flushed. He hurriedly issued some instructions to clear away his awkwardness. Yes. Elder Liao Qingxuan immediately walked out to attend to the matter. The Green Leaf Pavilion was in charge of gathering intelligence on everything within the territory of Xianyuan Kingdom. For such an expert to appear without them noticing, it was truly a failure on their part. His strength. The crowd was in disbelief. Mou, who was on top of the howling firmament beast, was even more so. She had witnessed the other party's growth for herself throughout the journey. She thought that even if Zhang Xian were to become a Jizuan realm pinnacle within 4 days, he would surely be the weakest of that tier. After all, it would take some time to adapt to one's newfound strength, and on top of that, one's jinshi would be a little unstable as well. Yet, Zhang Xian actually managed to defeat a half-transcension expert so easily. Was that fellow even human? Not only did his cultivation raise quickly, it was even reinforced perfectly. His strength was stable and deep, and there wasn't the slightest sign of instability. How in the world did he do it? That strike caused Luo Qianhong severe injuries. He felt so stifled that he could go insane. At this moment, all he felt was regret. Why was he so foolish as to listen to Dingmu's lies? How could a person who could force him into hiding in the Master Teacher Pavilion be an ordinary figure? If he didn't get involved, he could at least uphold his honor. Yet, all he had done now was embarrass himself. After this incident, his prestige as the head of the Master Teacher Pavilion would surely plummet, and many people would find faults with him. As a 2-star Master Teacher, I challenged a 3-star Master Teacher. This can be considered as insubordination. After I'm done with the matter here, I'll offer an explanation to the Master Teacher Pavilion through crashing the pavilion myself. Flinging his sleeves, Zhang Xian harumphed. Pavilion crashing referred to the act of challenging an entire Master Teacher Pavilion as an individual. Regardless of whether it was a conflict, a dispute, or unintentional disrespect, as long as one didn't betray humanity, one could crash a pavilion to absolve one of his crimes, and the headquarters would not pursue the matter. Crashing the pavilion? Luo Qianhong's face turned pale. Even though a successful pavilion crashing rarely occurred, as long as it happened, the master-teacher pavilion would be as good as destroyed. It would become the laughingstock of the entire Myriad Kingdom alliance. He would be forced to step down as the pavilion master, and in the worst-case scenario, the headquarters might even summon him to conduct an investigation. After all, if one was forced to the point of resorting to pavilion crashing, this meant that the matter had reached a dire state. Putong! Luo Qianhong's body was suddenly sapped of strength, and he fell to the ground. It was just a moment ago that he was standing majestically before the crowd, but after hearing those words, he found himself falling into despair. What kind of monster did Ding Mu offend? Ignoring the despairing Luo Qianhong, Zhang Xian glanced forward and saw that the inauguration was about to come to an end. As such, he hurriedly advanced forward. Stop him! Seeing that even the master-teacher pavilion had failed to stop the other party, and the other party even declared his intentions of pavilion crashing, Ding Mu's complexion turned awful. Walala! Along with his bellow, innumerable soldiers immediately stepped forward to surround Zhang Xian. The swords that they drew gleamed coldly under the sun. These soldiers weren't strong, and most of them were only at Dingli realm. However, it was their numbers that were truly impressive. On the vast heaven's altar, there were at least several thousands of them. A formation consisting of several thousand soldiers. Even a half-transcension would have to back down before such a terrifying force. Zhang Xian, be careful! Mou's face paled. As an individual, how could he possibly withstand an army? A Dingli realm soldier was no threat to him, and fighting 10 was just a walk in the park. However, when the numbers added up to several thousands, the nature of the event changed. No matter how strong an individual was, there was a limit to one's stamina. In a battle of attrition, Zhang Xian would eventually lose. This was the reason why itinerant cultivators didn't dare offend kingdoms. There was nothing an individual cultivator could do before the might of an entire country. This will be troublesome. Jin Sohai frowned. As a transcendent mortal realm expert, it would be difficult for even him to face a few thousand fighter realm cultivators at once. Killing a commander was easy, but facing off with an entire army was difficult. Indeed, this will be troublesome. Unless he uses the means of a poison master. Gongzi frowned as well. Even Jin Sohai would be troubled to face so many soldiers, needless to say, the other party. Even though the strength this Zhang Xian had displayed was outstanding, he was still far from matching up to his subordinate, Jin Songhai. The only way to achieve victory was to use the means of a poison master. Otherwise, no matter how powerful he was, he would surely eventually run dry before this huge army. He can't use the means of the poison master here. As a master teacher, killing the crown prince of a conferred kingdom is already a huge blemish on his records. I fear that if he were to use poison, he might incur the displeasure of the master-teacher pavilion headquarters. On top of that, he might be regarded as a traitor, given the hostile relationship between the master-teacher pavilion and the poison hall. Grand Elder Wei Yuqing said. Hall Master Gu Mu, if things get down to it, I think it would be better for you to make a move. As an elder of the Beast Hall, Grand Elder Wei Yuqing had a deep understanding of the affairs of the master teachers. This occupation served as the moral compass of the entire continent. To kill an inaugurating crown prince was already scandalous in itself. If Zhang Xian were to use the means of a poison master on top of that, his reputation would be ruined. As a master teacher, reputation was everything. Who would be willing to admit a person with questionable conduct as their teacher? It would become a huge blemish of his life that he would never be able to wash off. It would be nigh impossible for him to win the respect of other master teachers around the world and advance to a higher rank. All right. Hall Master Gu Mu nodded. He was invited here precisely for this matter. As long as he were to offer his assistance, he could be considered as to have repaid the debt of his senior granduncle. Let's wait a while longer first. Look at Zhang Xian's gaze, it seems like he has an idea in mind. After agreeing to the matter, Hall Master Gu Mu was about to make a move when Gongzi's voice suddenly echoed. Gaze? Hall Master Gu Mu was taken aback. He hurriedly glanced downward and he realized that something was amiss as well. Despite being surrounded by so many experts, the young man below didn't panic at all. Instead, he faced everything with composure. Way too much composure. If it was anyone else, they would have surely panicked under such circumstances. He must already have an idea in mind. Otherwise, he couldn't possibly remain so calm, Gongzi said. Let's watch on first. On! The crowd nodded in agreement as they turned their gazes to the sight below. Just as they were wondering what kind of method the young man was going to use to deal with these soldiers, a voice echoed. The core of cultivation lies in persistence. Only with diligence can one achieve improvement. For a Dingli realm to reach Pishue, there are three main factors. Firstly, one must accurately gauge the strength required for opening one's acupoint. A crisp voice echoed from the young man's mouth. A lecture? He's conducting a lecture now? Has he gone mad? Everyone was wondering what kind of strategy the young man would have against the thousands of soldiers before him. When the other party started preaching, everyone stared at one another in bewilderment. What was this? Surrounded by soldiers, yet he started preaching? Everyone thought that the troublemaker would surely suffer a terrible fate, but the other party was still going strong. Everyone thought that the interference of the master-teacher pavilion would be able to mediate the conflict, but the other party declared that he would crash the pavilion, not sparing the master-teacher pavilion any pride at all. Now, just as everyone thought that the heavens altar would be washed with blood, the young man began preaching. Can you at least obey common sense? Your actions are way too unfathomable. The group on top of the savage beasts were also stunned, unable to comprehend what Zhang Xian was up to. No, this isn't just a lecture. Suddenly, Gongzi seemed to realize something and his face warped in shock. His body trembled lightly as he said, This is impartation of heaven's will. Expelling 100 enemies with a word, eradicating an army with a phrase. Chapter 437 Expelling an army with words 2 in 1. Impartation of heaven's will? Everyone was bewildered. Those who were slightly more knowledgeable knew that impartation of heaven's will was a unique ability to master teachers. As long as one's soul depth was above 3.0, and the content one spoke was aligned with the essence of cultivation and was devoid of errors, there was a chance it could be triggered. Once triggered, those listening to the lecture would find their zhenqi being driven automatically, resulting in their cultivation being raised subconsciously. This sounded incredible, but in truth, all master teachers were capable of doing so. Given how talented that Zhang Xian was, it wasn't completely unexpected for him to be able to utilize this ability in the midst of his lecture. The impartation of heaven's will isn't a very powerful ability. However, if one can reach a high level of mastery in it, its effects can be amazing, Gongzi said as his body trembled in disbelief. A high level of mastery? The crowd was even more bewildered. Elder Jean should know that my physical condition hasn't been good ever since a young age, resulting in my inability to cultivate. As such, I've spent my time immersed in books, and I've read nearly all of the books accessible to me once. I once read, in an ancient manual, that when the impartation of heaven's will reaches the highest level, one would be able to utilize the voice of truth, which was capable of striking the depths of a person's soul directly. Even if the other party was an enemy, he would willingly concede to you and address you as teacher. Taking a deep breath, Gongzi suppressed his heavy breathing and spoke up. Voice of truth? Everyone widened their eyes in shock. Did the impartation of heaven's will possess such incredible effects? If that was the case, wouldn't one be almost invincible? Regardless of who it was, one just had to conduct a lesson for the other party to submit to him. All living beings in the world would be considered as one's student. Wait a moment. A person suddenly flashed across Grand Elder Wei Yuqing's mind as his face paled, and his eyes narrowed. With quivering lips, he asked, Do you mean Emperor Kong Shi? It was said that Kong Shi's words could bring about a celestial phenomenon, and there was none who had heard his lecture who wouldn't call him teacher. Even the most formidable and most hostile enemy would immediately concede to him, and willingly serve him as his student. There was a very old legend depicting Kong Shi when he hadn't reached the level of a 9-star master teacher yet. Back then, there was a person named Tui who carried intense animosity against him and thus wanted to claim his life. He had looked into Kong Shi's affairs and heard that the other party often held lectures beneath a certain tree. Thus, he decided to hide within the lush leaves of the tree with a weapon in hand, ready to strike when Kong Shi appeared. In the end, his efforts paid off. Kong Shi walked over to the tree and began conducting a lecture. However, after hearing a few words, Tui immediately felt embarrassed by himself, and he leaped out of his hiding spot and acknowledged Kong Shi as his teacher. It was due to this legend that Kong Shi earned himself the nickname of World's Teacher, and his name spread far and wide. Without any exception, those who had heard Kong Shi's words would eventually become his student. This was the ability that only Kong Shi possessed. Could Zhang Xian be capable of the same feat as well? Indeed. The person I am referring to is Kong Shi. Clenching his fists tightly, Gongzi's face turned red in agitation. Kong Shi's impartation of heavens will have reached an incredible level. With an utterance, the entire world would tremble before him. With an articulation, a gale would rage and thunder would rumble. Expelling 100 enemies with a word, eradicating an army with a phrase. It was said that when the otherworldly demonic tribe sent its army to assassinate him, Kong Shi was alone. However, without any fear, he began to preach, indifferent even when the swords and axes were before him. A few minutes later, the army of otherworldly demonic tribe was completely wiped out due to infighting. At which, Gongzi's pitch-black eyes turned to look at the others. Don't you think that what Zhang Xian is doing resembles the plot of the story? It does resemble it a bit. With pale faces, the crowd trembled slightly. What you mean is that Beast Tamer Zhang, no, Zhang Shi intends on conducting a lecture to command these soldiers to back off. Grand Elder Wei Yuqing's body shuddered in disbelief. There were many legends on Kong Shi going around on the continent, and over time, they had become overly exaggerated, making it difficult to determine fact from fiction. Thus, very few people took the stories for real. The matter of preaching to destroy the otherworldly demonic tribe was one of such common legends, and many people simply laughed it off. However, looking at Zhang Shi preaching before so many enemies, their hearts started beating wildly. I'm not too sure either, this story only happened to appear in my mind. Since Zhang Shi chose to do so, he probably has his reasons for it. After all, he can't possibly just be doing it out of boredom, Gongzi said. He wasn't Zhang Xian. He couldn't accurately guess the other party's thoughts. Now that Gongzi raised the idea, I think that what you say is really true. Look. In disbelief, Grand Elder Wei Yuqing was just about to continue inquiring about it when Jin Songhai's voice sounded. Jin Songhai had a grim look on his face as he stared at the scene on the heavens altar beneath with a look of incredulity. Turning his gaze over, Grand Elder Wei Yuqing was also stunned. Half of the ferocious soldiers who had wanted to attack Zhang Xian together suddenly fell in a daze, and as though the best treasures in the world had appeared before them, a look of delight slowly spread on their faces. As for the other half, they went further as to dump their weapons on the ground and sat cross-legged, beginning to cultivate as per the other party's guidance. All of a sudden, the menacing atmosphere suddenly turned into a sight of harmony. It is actually true? With widened eyes and mouth agape, Grand Elder Wei Yuqing seemed to have petrified. No words could describe his shock at the moment. Suddenly, an aura behind him began to surge intensely. Pila Pala! The sound of beans popping echoed. Unknowingly, drunk on Zhang Xian's words, Sun Chang's Junqi became driving on its own accord, and he broke through his Dingli realm bottleneck, successfully stepping into the realm of a Pishue cultivator. Breaking through one's bottleneck through just words? Seems like the rumors are true. Taking in this sight, Gongzi and the others clenched their fists tightly. If they weren't sure before, it couldn't be any clearer now. To break through the bottleneck between Dingli and Pishue with just words. This was similar to the ability depicted in that legend between Kong Shi and the otherworldly demonic tribe. Even if other master teachers were able to do the same as well, it would still require accumulation on the cultivator's part, and some time. But how long has it only been since Zhang Xian started his lecture? 20 breaths? 30 breaths? At most, it was only 40 breaths. In other words, in less than a minute, not only did Zhang Xian manage to stimulate the Jinqi and Sun Chang body, he even successfully induced a rise in cultivation realm in the latter. Such capability couldn't even be seen in 4-star pinnacle master teachers. Wait, look at those citizens around the heavens altar, Gumu said. The group hurriedly shifted their gazes over to the crowd. The citizens who were busy watching the commotion also began sitting down and meditating according to Zhang Xian's guidance. The sound of beans popping echoed throughout the square, and it was hard to imagine how many people had managed to achieve a breakthrough during this short period of time. These people were residents who had grown up here in Xianyuan Kingdom, and they each possessed a dear patriotism toward the royal palace. Thus, when the young man barged into the heavens altar and declared his malicious intentions against the crown prince, they felt deep hostility for the latter. However, in an instant, all of these emotions turned into admiration and gratitude. An itinerant cultivator, without the guidance of master teachers and formidable cultivation technique, would have to spend much effort just to break through a small cultivation realm. But now, with just a few words from the other party, they were making this leap in their cultivation. This was something they couldn't have fathomed before. The hostility they felt slowly faded, turning to gratitude and admiration. Having benefited from Zhang Xian's guidance, the latter could be considered as half a teacher to them already. Oh, how is this possible? In the green leaf pavilion head Dai Feng grabbed the edges of the windows tightly as he watched the phenomenon unfold before him. His head spun in astonishment. As the head of an intelligence-gathering agency, he had heard of the legend between Kong Shi and the otherworldly demonic tribe as well. He thought that it was just a legend, but to think that it would be true! To remain unaware when such a formidable master teacher had come to Xianyuan Royal City. The Green Leaf Pavilion could close down its services already. No, this can't be! I'll investigate myself to see who this Zhang Xian is. What kind of existence did Crown Prince Dingmu offend? Upon thinking of this, pavilion head Dai Feng's lips twitched. Unable to remain seated, he dashed down the pavilion. For the Green Leaf Pavilion to be unaware of such huge news was a massive failure. If he didn't gather all information related to the background of this fellow, he wouldn't be able to sleep well tonight. What are you all doing? Stop listening to his nonsense and kill him! Seeing all of the guards falling into a daze, Crown Prince Dingmu bellowed frenziedly. The reason why he had stationed an army on top of the heavens altar was to guard against any sudden movements or mystic treasure of that young man. Yet, with just a single lecture, the other party had successfully left everyone dazed. What was this? I told you all to kill him. What are you all doing listening to his lecture? This isn't a classroom. I'm commanding all of you to kill him. Gritting his teeth, Crown Prince Dingmu continued howling. However, before he could finish his words, all of the soldiers turned their heads simultaneously. Shut up! Boom! Even pebbles could be stacked up into a mountain. With so many trained Dingli realm and Pishua realm experts roaring furiously at the same time, it was as though a strike of celestial lightning had flown across the heavens, striking down on Dingmu. Pooh! Struck by the sonic boom, Crown Prince Dingmu's ears rang, and blood started flowing down his mouth and his nose. Even his eyes turned red from the impact, and it seemed as though blood would ooze down at any moment. Even a transcendent mortal expert would have to avoid a combined attack from several thousand soldiers at once, so of course a mere Jizuan realm advanced stage cultivator like him was wounded. You all! Quickly retreating a dozen steps, Crown Prince Dingmu felt as though he was going mad. These were all his soldiers. They lived off the royal family stipends, and they were specially groomed so that, when the need arises, they could be mobilized. Yet, all of them turned against him. What in the world? Dingmu's body couldn't stop convulsing. You! It's all your fault. With reddened eyes, Ding Mu glared at the preaching Zhang Xian with clenched jaws. Didn't I just kill a student of yours? Do you have to come all the way here and go to the extent of wounding a 3-star master teacher, the head of the master teacher pavilion, and making so many soldiers turn against me? Damn it, damn it! Roaring furiously, Crown Prince Ding Mu scrambled for an idea to win back the hearts of these soldiers. But at this moment, standing at the very center of the crowd, the young man suddenly stopped his lecture, and scanning the surroundings, he said, "Bao! Walla!" In that instant, several thousands of soldiers, as well as the countless spectators, immediately kneeled to the floor as respect and admiration gleamed in their eyes. Then, their voices echoed in the square. "Paying respect to teacher! It's a half-teacher formality! So many people are bowing to Zhang Shi earnestly." On the back of the howling firmament beast, Mou swallowed a mouthful of saliva. She knew that young man's talent as a master teacher surpassed that of ordinary people, but she didn't expect that he would be able to win over the hearts of the soldiers on the heaven's altar and the surrounding crowd with just a lecture. While a half-teacher couldn't compare up to one's true teacher, it was still a relationship surpassing that of most ordinary ones. In this world, the prestige of teachers was immense, and students were expected to treat their teachers with the utmost respect. At that moment, Zhang Xian was standing with his hands behind his back, watching nonchalantly at the kneeling crowd as though a conqueror. Ding Mu, who was undergoing the crowning ceremony at this instant, seemed no different from a clown. To remain nonchalant before an army of several thousand, and conduct a lesson to turn them into his students instead. Zhang Xian, perhaps you might really be able to fare well in the master-teacher tournament, and strike your name out into the world. Clenching her fists tightly, Mou's eyes reddened in agitation. That was a true genius. There was only a single outcome for those who refused to submit: to be crushed. Regardless of whether you are an expert or an influential individual, before absolute might, nothing else mattered. Mou could already see the storm that Zhang Xian would cause during the master-teacher tournament. With just a short moment of preaching, he's able to make so many people willingly acknowledge him as a half-teacher. On top of the absolute control over the impartation of heaven's will, his soul depth must have reached at least 12.0. In other words, in terms of soul depth, he isn't inferior to a 4-star teacher? Luo Qianhong's teeth were clattering together. In that instant, it felt as though he had dropped into an ice vault, and he shuddered in fear. Even though Gongzi was well informed, he wasn't a master teacher. As such, he was unaware of many matters. It wasn't that difficult to utilize the impartation of heaven's will. One only had to speak of content aligned with the essence of cultivation, but to make so many people fall into a trance and achieve a breakthrough in their cultivation simultaneously was no simple feat. There was a high requirement for one's soul depth. Putting everything aside, the insight energy contained within the other party's words felt as though a cool breeze to the ears, inducing subconscious trust into him. With just this, Luo Qianhong could conclude that the other party's soul depth was at least 12.0 every 3.0 difference in soul depth was a demarcation zone for a master teacher. A soul depth above 12.0 was equivalent to a 4-star master teacher. A 4-star master teacher beneath 20? What kind of monster is that? Isn't the other party just a 2-star master teacher? Isn't the other party just a reckless countryside bumpkin? If I knew how formidable the other party is, I would never have gotten involved. Glancing at one another, Luo Qianhong and Bai Qin could see the fear and regret in each other's eyes. If they could, they truly wanted to tear apart that Crown Prince Ding Mu at this instant. What one feared the most was a lousy teammate that would pull one down. This time, they were truly done in badly by that fellow. "Pavilion Master, what should we do now?" Bai Qin asked with a tearful face while suppressing his injuries. Initially, he was plotting his revenge for this humiliation. However, after seeing that the other party's soul depth had exceeded 12, such thoughts vanished altogether. The greatest difficulty to the promotion of a master teacher was soul depth. As long as one's soul depth reached the mark, with sufficient time, the rest wasn't too much of a problem. To exact vengeance on a future 4-star master teacher? He really didn't have the guts to do so. Go back and make some preparations for his pavilion crashing. All we can wish for is for him to fail. Once he passes, we'll be doomed. With a resigned expression, Luo Qianhong shook his head. If the other party failed the pavilion crashing, he could still sell the other party a favor and let bygones be bygones. However, once the other party succeeded, there would be nothing left for him. What the heck was this? How did he offend such a monster? With a stiff body, Luo Qianhong was just about to say something more when the young man standing at the very center of the crowd coldly surveyed the surroundings before speaking with an authoritative voice. Since you all address me as your teacher, are you all going to stop me from killing this person? Becoming a celestial master teacher had not just granted Zhang Xian with the eye of insight, his impartation of heaven's will had also made a huge breakthrough. Once these people achieve a breakthrough in their cultivation and became his student, the rest was a walk in the park. We wouldn't dare! If teacher doesn't wish to dirty your hands, we can do it for you. Despite his position, Crown Prince Ding Mu has committed many vile deeds. We've long wished to teach him a lesson. As long as teacher gives the order, we're willing to take him down for you. Walala! The army of soldiers immediately opened up a pathway, and at the same time, several voices sounded here and there. Crown Prince Ding Mu was a willful and arrogant person. He had made many unwise decisions and committed innumerable vile deeds. Even though many soldiers were aware and infuriated by it, none of them dared to voice their complaints. However, before this half-teacher of theirs, their true sentiments came pouring out. You all! Crown Prince Ding Mu's heart had already turned cold upon facing the betrayal of so many soldiers, and upon hearing those words, he nearly fainted on the spot. The armies that other kingdoms groomed were willing to lay down their lives for the royal family. But what in the world was with the army he had groomed? He commanded them to kill someone for him, but all of them ended up acknowledging the latter as their teacher and even offered their services. The heck! I am the Crown Prince, the future Emperor of Xianyuan Kingdom. How can I be killed by trash like you? It won't be that easy to kill me! Give me the crown! Ding Mu's expression warped in savagery. My life is my own. Don't even dream about laying your filthy hands on me. With a loud roar, Ding Mu rushed toward the old Emperor Ding Chong, snatched the crown from his hands, and placed it on his head. At this time, he could care less about formalities or traditions. He walked directly to the throne at the center of the Heaven's altar, and sat down. Under the decree of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, I am now the Emperor of Xianyuan Kingdom. Let's see who dares to touch me now. With a face distorted by insanity, he bellowed furiously. Sitting on the throne with the crown on his head, he could be officially considered as the new Emperor of Xianyuan Kingdom. As such, he was under the protection of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Putting aside a 2-star master teacher, even a 4-star master teacher would have to think twice before laying a hand on him. Otherwise, if an emperor could be killed that easily, what was the use of the existence of the alliance? The alliance was a balance of power between the various kingdoms. While internal struggles were reluctantly overlooked, the murder of an emperor was something that was vehemently disallowed. This is bad. The soldiers who had offered to make a move for Zhang Xian looked at one another hesitantly upon seeing this move. If a crown prince was killed, the emperor could still appoint a new one. However, killing an emperor was synonymous with challenging the prestige of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Zhang Xian's face darkened as well. He didn't expect the fellow to be so shameless as to ignore the ceremony, and immediately don the crown either. Now that the other party was the emperor, killing him would bring about a lot of trouble. Haha, I am now the emperor. With the backing of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance behind me, do any of you dare touch me? Are any of you qualified to touch me? Seeing the hesitance in everyone's eyes, Ding Mu roared in laughter. Glee reflected in his eyes. Knowing that Zhang Xian would go after him, he had already planned out his countermeasure. Everything he prepared was just for this day. You might be capable, talented, strong, and above all, you have a good teacher. However, I am not lacking either. I have an entire conferred kingdom behind me. I have the Myriad Kingdom Alliance behind me. With such an identity, even if I have faulted, only the Alliance had the rights to pursue it. A 2-star master teacher like you aren't worthy. Also, all of you. Despite living off the stipends of the kingdom, how dare you all betray the kingdom? You all deserve to die. Ding Mu roared furiously with a savage expression. We. The faces of the crowd paled. Even though there was just a thin line between the crown prince and the emperor of a kingdom, this gap meant everything. The crown prince didn't possess the authority to behead so many soldiers, but the emperor did. Zhang Xian, Pavilion Master Luo has proposed to mediate the matter previously, but you disagreed. It's too late to change your mind now. After mocking Zhang Xian, Ding Mu stared haughtily at the crowd, and with the disposition befitting of an emperor, he declared, I'll give you all a chance to make up for your mistakes. As long as you all kill this intruder, I'll pardon you all for your previous sins. On top of that, I'll even confer a nobility on the one who finishes him off and grant him a life of utmost prestige and wealth. Why? Do you all still intend on going against my orders, the orders of your emperor? Seeing the crowd hesitating, Ding Mu gazed downward at the faces below, suppressing the entire square with the majesty of an emperor. One. However, before Ding Mu could finish his words, a jade token flew out. Then, bright light burst forth from it, forming a gigantic image. The image consisted of just 3 words, Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Following which, a deep voice reverberated in the air. The succession of the throne requires a prior announcement and a complete ceremony. Ding Mu has disregarded the rules and snatched the imperial authority willfully. The Alliance declares his inauguration invalid. The voice echoed loudly throughout Xianyuan Royal City, and even the clouds seemed to tremor slightly under it. This is a decree from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance's envoy, someone uttered amidst the crowd. Chapter 438. The Great Xianyuan Formation Silence. Ding Mu had just declared his unparalleled authority within the kingdom when the decree of the envoy arrived the next instant. Everyone was dumbfounded. The Myriad Kingdom Alliance was several 100,000 kilometers away from Xianyuan Kingdom, and even when riding on a Zhizuan realm pinnacle savage beast, it would still take several dozen days of journey to travel here. This envoy sure is efficient. This. Impossible! How can this be possible? While jaws were falling to the ground, Ding Mu's final string of rationality finally snapped. Are you playing with me? I had just barely managed to become the emperor and force the other party to step down. Victory is right before me, and yet such a twist just had to occur at this moment. With this, no matter what I do, I'll just be regarded as an unofficial and unrecognized sovereign. Conferred kingdoms were vassal kingdoms to the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, and if the latter refused to recognize his position, nothing he said would be useful. Your Majesty, that is an authentic decree from the envoy of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. I've seen it before. Seeing the doubt on Ding Mu's face, an official walked over with a nervous look and reported. The decree of the envoy couldn't be forged. The words Myriad Kingdom Alliance possessed a unique authority to it that no one else could imitate. With just a single look, one could determine whether it was authentic or not. Men, the left minister is spouting nonsense and shaking the foundation of the country. Kill him! Ding Mu was already in a frenzied state, and the words of the official pushed him off the edge. He immediately bellowed a command. Your Majesty! The crowd stared at one another hesitantly, not knowing what to do. You all! Seeing that everyone was disregarding his orders, Ding Mu's eyes reddened in rage. Just as he was about to roar furiously once more, an impassive voice sounded in the air. Since the Myriad Kingdom Alliance refuses to recognize you, that means that your position is unofficial. No one will listen to the commands of a fake emperor. Turning around, he saw Zhang Xian gazing at him with cold eyes. In truth, Zhang Xian was also bewildered by the situation. Before coming, he had already prepared himself for the worst situation. Regardless of whether the other party became the emperor or not, he would make his move. Of all things, he didn't expect the Myriad Kingdom Alliance's involvement in this matter. The appearance of the decree meant that Ding Mu's ascension to the throne was unlawful, and the Myriad Kingdom Alliance wouldn't pursue the affair even if he were killed. So what if these useless fools refuse to obey my commands? Do you think that I'll fear you just because of that? You might be strong, but it won't be that easy to kill me. Having lost the throne, the backing of the Master-Teacher Pavilion, and being unable to mobilize his subordinates, Ding Mu knew that he had no choice but to resort to brute force. His face warped as though a ravenous wolf, as he glared fixedly at the young man before him. Then, he abruptly reached forward to grab the Jade Seal. With the Jade Seal in his hands, his disposition changed all of a sudden. In an instant, he felt as if he were a towering mountain standing before everyone else. Even a half-transcension expert would have to back off before the powerful aura he was emitting at this moment. The reason why our Ding clan was able to build a massive kingdom that no other kingdoms dare to attack and maintain our lineage for more than a millennium isn't just purely through brute force. It is because of a formation. The infrastructures in Xianyuan Kingdom are positioned in a way that aligns with the sun, moon, and the stars, forming a grade 4 primary formation. You wish to kill me? Dream on. Even if I can't become the emperor, I'll pull you down along with me. Roaring furiously, the Jade Seal in his hands flew in the air, triggering the formation. In an instant, it seemed as though the entire capital had come to life. An incredibly powerful pressure fell down from the skies. All of a sudden, the crowd in the square suddenly felt something sealing their movements. At the same time, a powerful pressure overwhelmed them, threatening to kill them if they were to make an unwise move. It's the Great Xianyuan Formation. He's actually triggered the Great Xianyuan Formation. Amidst the crowd, an official's face suddenly paled. His body slackened, and he fell weakly to the ground. Great Xianyuan Formation? What's that? There were many people who were unaware of its existence, and a person asked anxiously amidst the crowd. It's said that the founding ancestor of Xianyuan Kingdom was a formidable formation master. After uniting the lands and building the kingdom, he chose this location to build the capital. Using the mountains, rivers, and the infrastructure as the formation flags, he built an immense formation. Even a mortal transcendent expert would die easily if he were to be caught in it. This formation can only be triggered by the Imperial Seal, and it's the final line of defense of the kingdom. No one here will be able to withstand its immense might. The official trembled uncontrollably as he spoke. Previously, when Ding Mu ordered them to kill the other party, no one listened to him. Now that he had activated the formation and trapped everyone within it, if he intended to take revenge, who could stand against him? Hearing those words and feeling the violent might of a formation shrouding them, the crowd's faces warped in fear. They thought, given the disparity in strength between the other Master Teacher and Crown Prince Ding Mu, even if no one were to obey his commands, there was nothing for them to worry about. No one could have expected for the latter to have such an ace up his sleeves. A grade 4 formation could kill even a mortal transcendent expert, so how could mere fighter realm cultivators like them withstand it? And without sufficient strength, it was impossible for them to break out of it. I looked like they were doomed. You are an envoy of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance? While a pandemonium had broken out below, in the air, on the back of a savage beast, Wei Yuqing looked at the young man with tightly clenched fists. From the attitude of the others toward this Gongzi, he could tell that the other party's standing was definitely extremely high. Otherwise, Gu Mu's teacher, as a 4-star poison master, wouldn't act so deferentially to him. But even so, he didn't expect the other party to be an envoy from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. An envoy holding a decree was representative of the head of the alliance. If anyone dared to challenge his authority, he could kill them as he pleased. In other words, he possessed unparalleled authority within the territories of the alliance. Yet, to think that the person wielding such immense authority would just be a teenage child. If he hadn't seen the other party throwing out the token personally, he would have never believed it to be true. On! Gongzi nodded silently. At this moment, his gaze was directed at the formation below, and a frown appeared on his face. A moment later, he turned to the elder beside him. Is there any way for you to break this formation? Gongzi, you should also know that I'm not adept at formations. Jin Songhai's face flushed in embarrassment. Even though he was a transcendent mortal expert, his occupation was a poison master. His knowledge of formations was severely limited. On top of that, the formation below was incredibly massive, and even if a 4-star primary formation master were to be here, it would be hard for him to stop the formation. This formation makes use of the mountains and rivers in the surroundings to augment its might. On top of that, it hasn't been used before ever since it was set up, and over time, a massive amount of spiritual energy had accumulated within it. Not just me, I'm afraid that, even if Pavilion Master Kong were to be here, he would be helpless before it. After a moment of hesitation, Jin Songhai spoke his analysis. Even though he wasn't adept in formations, as a transcendent mortal expert of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, he still possessed a decent discernment ability. It wasn't too difficult for him to determine how fearsome the formation below was. Even the head of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion Master Kong, would be helpless before it. And Pavilion Master Kong was the most capable formation master throughout the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Through this, the fearsomeness of the formation was apparent. I know that this formation is formidable, but do you have any way to save him? Gongzi couldn't help but ask. Deciphering and stopping a formation was very much different from saving a person from a formation. In which case, the latter was much easier than the former. Jin Songhai shook his head and said, "This formation has been nourished over a long period of time, granting it immense might. Life and death hinge on just a single thought of the one controlling the formation. To break it, it'll require 16 mortal transcendent experts standing at 16 different locations. Even if it's just saving someone from within, it would require at least 5 people at the same level as me to make a move simultaneously." On top of the grade, the scale also determined the strength of the formation. The larger the formation set up, the more powerful it would be. This was the reason why formation plates were lacking in might. The formation below covered the entire Xianyuan royal city, extending for a length of several hundred kilometers. On top of that, it had accumulated a frightening quantity of energy over the course of 1,000 years, making it a fearsome weapon. It would already be a blessing if a mortal transcendent expert could survive a killing formation of such might. Saving someone within was completely impossible. Then, what should we do? You also know that he's Lu Qing. Hearing that even his guard was helpless before this immense formation, Gongzi panicked. Don't panic. If it comes down to it, I'll just have to try barging into it. Jin Songhai gritted his teeth. He knew of the gratitude that Gongzi felt toward physician Lu Qing. The other party had specially traveled from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance here just to look for him. If the other party were to die before him, wouldn't he die of regret? What do you mean by barging into it? At that moment, a doubtful voice sounded within the room. Turning around, the group saw that Sun Chang was done with his cultivation and had stood up once more. Under Zhang Xian's impartation of Heaven's will, not only had Sun Chang reinforced his Pishua realm cultivation, he had even opened up 3 acupoints. Thus, he was in good spirits. Sun Chang had been on the verge of breaking through Dingli realm for a while now, so Zhang Xian's impartation of Heaven's will was exceptionally effective on him. Your young master is trapped in Ding Mu's formation, and he's in an extremely precarious situation now. If you can contact Yang Shi, you should hurry up. I fear that Zhang Shi might be coming to his limits already. Seeing that Sun Chang was done with his cultivation, Gongzi hurriedly advised. In truth, he regretted not getting Jin Songhai to make a move on Ding Mu when he threw out of the envoy's decree earlier on. If he had done so, such a situation wouldn't have occurred. He was here to repay the favor, but not only did he fail to achieve anything, he even landed his benefactor into a precarious situation. How could he have the face to live on if the other party really died? In his view, if not for the decree he threw out, Ding Mu wouldn't have been forced to activate the formation. Formation? Glancing out of the window to look at the sight below, Sun Chang brushed the matter off impassively. Seeing your grim faces, I thought that it would be some serious affair. Turns out that it's just this. Don't worry, the young master is fine. Hearing those words, Jin Sohai staggered and nearly fainted. Do you know how powerful this formation is? The one below is your young master. He's trapped in a formation which even a mortal transcendent expert would be unable to break out of. Yet how can you remain so nonchalant? Are you truly that brave, or is there something wrong with your head? I have no idea. Sun Chang waved his hands nonchalantly. But that doesn't make a difference. A small formation like this doesn't mean anything at all. Tianxian Kingdom had no formation masters at all, so how could Sun Chang know anything about formations? Even if the most basic formation was laid out before him, he still wouldn't be able to decipher it at all. But even though he knew nothing at all, Zhao Ye and the others had recounted the events at the Lin clan back then to him at least a few hundred times. On top of that, he had also personally witnessed the young master kicking the formation at the residence of Lu Chang's ancestors to a stop. He knew that no one could match up to the young master in the field of formations. It might be something fearsome to the others, but to the young master, it was just a walk in the park. Doesn't mean anything at all? A small formation? How can you call Zhangshu your young master and behave like that? Gongzi's face darkened and he nearly erupted on the spot. Chapter 439. Lucid mind. Upon hearing that their young master was trapped, other subordinates would surely hurriedly plead with others to save him. Yet, not only was this fellow not worried, he even looked at them with such an expression. Are you a subordinate or an enemy? That was a formation that even Pavilion Master Kong would find hard to break. Yet, to view it with such nonchalance, are you that brave or do you desperately crave for your young master to die here? Gongzi was about to faint from anger, and by the side, Wei Yuqing's eyes were also rolling around the place. If not for Zhang Xian entrusting his subordinate to him personally, he would have thought that this fellow was an impostor. Probably, he was the only one in the world who could watch idly as death loomed above his master. What's wrong? Sun Chang couldn't comprehend why the other party had reprimanded him. I'll go then. I am indebted to Yanshe, and now that his student is in trouble, I can't sit idly by the side. Seeing how this Cretan didn't have any intentions to look for Yanshe to save his young master, Bu Mu and the others decided to disregard him altogether. You are intending to save the young master? Sun Chang finally came to a realization, and a look of disdain appeared on his face. I didn't expect you all to be so inexperienced. And to think that one of you is the envoy from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. It's just a formation, what's the big deal? With the young master around, you all really don't need to worry at all. Inexperienced? A fellow from an unranked kingdom who didn't even know what a formation was dared to look at the envoy from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance with disdain. The crowd was so furious that they nearly spurted blood. You are the one who's inexperienced, your entire family is inexperienced. Gongzi clenched his jaws together, tempted to tear the fatty before him apart. But other than having him look for Yanshe, there was no better solution. Thus, suppressing his anger, he began to explain. This is the Great Xianyuan formation, and nourished over a course of 1,000 years, it's the first time it's being activated. Oh! After hearing the explanation, Sun Chang simply nodded his head indifferently and said, Now that you're done, you should take a rest. You! Gongzi nearly flew into a rampage. It was as though the fellow before him didn't understand the human language at all. He had wasted his breath on him. Damn it! Forget it. This wasn't the time to be lashing out on this kind of heartless fellow. Saving Zhangshe took priority. As such, he decided to disregard the fatty and turned to look at Jin Sohai instead. Elder Jin, I might require your strength on this matter. Here is a decree representing my identity. If Ding Mu insists on making a move, you are free to kill him on the spot. Just as Gongzi was issuing some instructions to Jin Sohai, intending to resolve the matter the brute way, Grand Elder Wei Yuqing and Gu Mu suddenly exclaimed. What? Gongzi, look! Seeing the expressions on the duo, Geding, Gongzi's heart skipped a beat. Thinking that perhaps Zhang Xian might have already died in that short moment of delay, he hurriedly turned his gaze down, and his eyes widened in shock. That humongous formation, which seemed as though it would wipe out everything within it, suddenly vanished into thin air. The sight below was completely calm, as though nothing had happened at all. Zhang Xian was still walking forward slowly, and at this moment, he was already less than 10 meters away from Ding Mu. What happened? Rubbing his eyes furiously, Gongzi was astounded. It was just a moment ago that he saw the formation ravaging, threatening to claim the lives of those inside at any moment. Yet why did it disappear all of the sudden? Did he see wrongly? Just now. Wei Yuqing's face was completely pale, and his lips were quivering. It seemed like even speaking was a great difficulty for him at the moment. What happened? Jin Sohai couldn't help but ask as well. It seems like... Zhang Xian stretched out a finger, and then, it simply turned out like this. Wei Yuqing was on the verge of tears. Despite witnessing it with his own eyes, the situation simply seemed even more unbelievable to him. What the heck was this? With just a light tap of a finger, the ravaging formation came to an instant stop. Didn't Jin Sohai and Gongzi just praise this formation to the skies? Didn't they say that even the Pavilion Master of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion couldn't stop him, and it would require at least a dozen transcendent mortal experts to forcefully halt it? Yet, the other party stopped it so easily. Was he dreaming? Stopped it with a single finger? Jin Sohai and Gongzi nearly bit down on their tongues out of shock. Just as they were about to ask if the two of them had seen wrongly, Sun Quan walked forward with both hands behind him and a proud look on his face. Our young master might have never taken the Formation Master examination, but this kind of weak formation means nothing to him at all. Then, he stared at the group disdainfully once more. How inexperienced. Anva? For Star Poison Master? Pui! In the end, you all still panic over minor situations like this. You! Bing looked down. Gongzi was just about to rationalize it out with this fellow when Jin Sohai pointed below with a grim look. Gongzi, look! Afraid that he would miss out anything just like before, he ignored Sun Chang and turned his gaze downward as well. You! Impossible! While Gongzi, Jin Sohai, and the others were dying from shock above, Ding Mu was also on the verge of suffering a stroke. The Great Xianyuan Formation was his greatest backing. One of the main reasons why he hurriedly ended the inauguration ceremony was so that he could gain control of the Jade Seal. He thought that once he activated it, even the envoy would mean nothing at all. Yet, before such a formidable formation could work its course, the other party had already halted it with a light tap. Brother, who the hell are you? Without raising your legs, you could scare Bai Qin into leaping away. With a single hit, you caused the half-transcendent Pavilion Master Luo Qianhong to vomit buckets of blood, and now, you stop such a formidable formation with a single finger. Are you sure that you are a 2-star Master Teacher and not the reincarnation of Kong Shi? You should have expected this when you tried to kill me back then. Ignoring the other party's shock, Zhang Xian continued advancing forward. The Great Xianyuan Formation might be vast and powerful, but just like any formation, it had a core. Since Ding Mu activated the formation via the Jade Seal on the Heaven's Altar, naturally, the core was somewhere around here as well. Through the Library of Heaven's Path, it wasn't too difficult for Zhang Xian to determine the precise point to strike and stop it. You won't know who's the victor until the very end. Recovering from his shock, a savage expression reappeared on Ding Mu's face. Knowing that the formation was already useless, he threw the Jade Seal on the floor. Then, clenching his fists tightly, he propelled his cultivation and cloaked his hands with a layer of Jinqi. Phantom Battle Technique, Heaven-Shattering Fist. Ding Mu was only at Jizuan Realm Advanced Stage, but through this battle technique, he was able to take the top spot of the green leaf board. This showed how formidable this battle technique was. Die! Knowing the other party was a tough adversary, Ding Mu drove his cultivation to his limits and took the initiative. Boom! The air was tightly compressed under his might, causing a deafening sonic boom. In the blink of an eye, his fist was already right before Zhang Xian, headed for his chest. Strong! He's at Jizuan Realm Pinnacle as well. To think that he'd made a breakthrough as well! Upon seeing the massive strength the Ding Mu displayed, the crowd was stunned. Many of those who were aware of the affairs of the Crown Prince realized that the Crown Prince wasn't at Jizuan Realm advanced stage as per the rumors, he had already reached pinnacle. It's not that he made a breakthrough. Rather, he used some kind of secret art. Luo Qianhong had a grim look on his face. He was a good friend of the other party, and the other party had been hiding in the Master Teacher Pavilion the past few days. As such, he had a good grasp over the other party's strength. Even though he had reached Jizuan Realm advanced stage for some time now, it would still take at least half a year before he could make another breakthrough. Thus, the only plausible explanation was that he had used some kind of secret art. Rumor has it that the royal family had a secret art which burned their blood essence in exchange for a temporary increment in their cultivation by 1 to 2 small realms. Even so, that Zhang Xian is in trouble. He clenched his fists tightly. The reason why Ding Mu could reach the top of the Young Leaf board wasn't due to his position as the Crown Prince but because he possessed true strength. Even without resorting to such secret art, he could defeat a Jizuan Realm pinnacle expert. With this leap in his cultivation, even Luo Qianhong himself would find it hard to triumph over the other party. That Zhang Xian had only managed to injure him through exploiting the flaws in his techniques and his powerful physical body. On the other hand, Crown Prince Ding Mu, due to the spirit-blood-body nourishment formula of the royal family, possessed a powerful physical body as well. Regardless of whether it was his cultivation technique, battle technique, or physical body, there was no flaw to be picked from him. It would be impossible for Zhang Xian to defeat the other party using the same means. This is your ace? Just as Luo Qianhong thought that Zhang Xian would be unable to hold his ground against Ding Mu, the young man's calm voice sounded. After which, the young man flexed his fingers and grabbed forward, as though capturing a rabbit trapped in a cage. Who? Ding Mu's fist art was dispelled in an instant. Then, as though Ding Mu was a little chicken, Zhang Xian grabbed at his neck, lifting him up. What heaven-shattering fist, phantom pinnacle battle technique, blood-burning secret art. Before that young man, it was as laughable as playing house. This is the realm which even 4-star master teachers find it hard to achieve, vanquishing facade, lucid mind? Narrowing his eyes, Luo Qianhong's face reflected his disbelief. Chapter 440 Ding Hong 2-in-1. Most cultivators were able to reach a state of mind at the level of 2 Dan Heart of Tranquil Water. But to exceed that level was extremely difficult. It was said that only upon reaching the level of a 4-star master teacher would one have the chance to make the breakthrough. Heart of Tranquil Water only allowed one to remain impervious to external factors. The higher realm to that was vanquishing facade, lucid mind that Luo Qianhong just exclaimed. Upon reaching this level, one would be able to peer through chaos to see the crux of the matter. At the same time, with a clearer mind, one's analytical power would grow substantially stronger. Even though it was far from a match for the Eye of Insight, it was useful in the sense that it provided a master teacher with a greater degree of rationalizing abilities. For example, no matter how knowledgeable one was, it was impossible for one to have seen all questions in the world and know the answers to them. However, if one had reached this state, one could easily deduce the motive of the one setting the question and the content which the question was trying to assess a person on. By seeing through all of the facade, one would be able to provide the most accurate answer. Knowledge is omnipresent around us, only waiting to be analyzed. As such, this realm was also known as Lucid Analytical Realm. This Zhang Xian was able to see through Ding Mu's heaven-shattering fist and blood-burning secret art, immediately aiming for the neck instead. Clearly, he had seen through all of the facades contained within the moves and the purposes each of them served. Even if the person hadn't reached the lucid analytical realm yet, he wasn't too far from it. This explained why the other party could neutralize his whisking sleeves so easily. As for whether it was the higher realm, Eye of Insight, this was something that he dared not even imagine. After all, this was an ability that even most 6-star master teacher didn't possess. How could it appear in a 2-star master teacher who wasn't even 20 yet? Even so, just the thought that the other party had reached lucid analytical realm had already left him incredibly shocked. What kind of monster was the other party? Yo you! Having his neck grabbed, a mix of shock and fear surfaced on Ding Mu's face. He thought that by using the blood-burning secret art and his most powerful move, even if he wasn't a match for the other party, he would still be able to stand his own ground. He didn't even consider the possibility of being subdued as soon as he made a move. Don't kill me! I was bewitched by that woman, Lin Long, back then. I was blind to have made a move on you. As long as you don't kill me, I'll give you whatever you want. Anything that is within Xianyuan Kingdom's means, I'll give it to you. Even 100 or 200 spirit stones isn't a problem at all. The young man before him had defeated Luo Qianhong, dispelled the great Xianyuan formation, and even his final ace was crushed that easily. This time, Ding Mu truly felt frightened and helpless. Xianyuan Kingdom was qualified to deal with spirit stones, and as long as the other party was willing to spare him, no amount of wealth was too much. Spirit stones? Zhang Xian shook his head. If not for Lu Chong taking the blow for him, he would already have been dead. Could spirit stones be used to trade for the welfare of his student? Since I said that I'll kill you, then pardon me. Only one fate awaits you. Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up as he exerted more force through his fingers. Great-grandfather, save me! Seeing that Zhang Xian was about to really make a move, Ding Mu's face paled and he hurriedly shouted for help. Let him go! As soon as Ding Mu shouted for help, a loud bellow reverberated across the entire city. It sounded as though the rumbling of a thunder, shaking the ground and buildings in the area. Frowning, Zhang Xian glanced over. The voice came from the depths of the royal palace right in front of him. Deep and steady, those words seemed to wield an immense pressure. Even despite Zhang Xian's recent massive breakthrough, he found himself on the verge of caving in from the pressure. Strong! He clenched his fists tightly. Accompanied with the Eye of Insight and Library of Heaven's Path, Zhang Xian could match up to even a half-transcension at his current strength. Yet, the other party was able to induce such a sensation within him with just words. Without a doubt, the other party's cultivation definitely exceeded that of Luo Qianhong, reaching that legendary realm. He didn't expect such an expert to exist amidst the Xianyuan royal family. Great-grandfather? Could it be? He isn't dead yet? Atop of the savage beast, Grand Elder Wei Yuqing's face darkened. You know this man? Gongzi turned to look at Grand Elder Wei Yuqing. On! Grand Elder Wei Yuqing nodded. There's a ranking board for the strongest experts within Xianyuan Kingdom known as the Green Leaf Board, and on it, despite being a half-transcension expert and a 3-star intermediate master teacher, Luo Qianhong was only in the 3rd place. 3rd place? Gongzi and Jin Sohai glanced at one another. They had seen the Pavilion Master's strength for themselves previously when he made a move on Zhang Xian. Even though he was defeated by Zhang Xian in an instant, his true strength shouldn't be underestimated. Among half-transcension expert, he definitely ranked amidst the top. Yet, with such strength, he was only placed at the 3rd rank. Who could the other two in front of him be? The one ranked second is not a cultivator, but the greatest backing of Xianyuan Kingdom, a half-transcension savage beast, steel-back-winged dragon. Grand Elder Wei Yuqing said. You're referring to that powerful savage beast which possesses a trace of the dragon bloodline? Jin Sohai frowned. Similar to the nightmare beast, the steel-back-winged dragon also possessed the dragon bloodline. Even though it was extremely thin, it granted them a portion of the overwhelming strength of the dragon tribe. It possessed steel wings as sharp as knives, and its speed was one that would leave the mouths of onlookers agape. Thick scales filled its body, granting it an impenetrable defense. On top of that, it possessed immense strength and stamina as well. From birth, it was already destined to reach half-transcension realm. In fact, with its powerful physical traits, it could even match up with some of the weaker spirit beasts. The other conferred kingdoms may not know much about the great Xianyuan Kingdom, but the steel-back-winged dragon is common knowledge. This was precisely the reason why, despite Emperor Ding Chang's weak personality, No kingdom dared to turn their blades to us. As the Grand Elder of the Beast Hall, there was no way Wei Yuqing wouldn't know about such a powerful savage beast in Xianyuan Kingdom. If not for this formidable backing, even if Zhang Xian didn't do anything at all, this kingdom would have been annexed by the other conferred kingdoms already. But if the steel-back-winged dragon is only ranked at second place, could the first place refer to? Gu Mu turned his gaze over in astonishment. That's right, it's the person who had just spoken, Crown Prince Ding Mu's great-grandfather, the 178th Emperor of Xianyuan Kingdom. Ding Hong! Grand Elder Wei Yuqing clenched his fists tightly as he said, "This Ding Hong could be considered a genius among geniuses. 80 years ago, he was already the #1 expert in the kingdom, just that, one day, he faded out of public view. Even I had thought that he was already dead, and the reason why his name remained on the green leaf board was out of remembrance. Yet to think that he was still alive! The #1 expert 80 years ago? But his lifespan." Gu Mu widened his eyes in shock. Making the breakthrough to Jizuan realm meant that one's level of existence had reached greater heights, and there would be an overall enhancement in one's physical attributes. Even though one's lifespan would be increased as well, this increment was minimal, perhaps just a few years at best. Under normal circumstances, 100 years was already the limit for most Jizuan realm experts. If Ding Hong was the #1 expert of the kingdom 80 years ago, he must have at least reached the half-transcension realm at that time. To be still living now. Didn't this mean that he was already beyond 100 years old? If it's really him, he should be 115 this year, Grand Elder Wei Yuqing said. 115? Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan. Prolonged Longevity Realm? Jin Sohai asked. The Transcendent Mortal Realm, also known as the Surmounting Mortality Realm and the Mortal Metamorphosis Realm, meant overcoming the limits of a mortal and reaching a brand new level of existence. This was the terminology used for the realms, and just like the Fighter 9 Dawn, it had 9 different realms to it as well. 1 Dan Prolonged Longevity Realm. Upon reaching this level, there would be a huge leap in one's level of existence. At this realm, one would be able to absorb the spiritual energy in the world to heal the various traumas cultivating had brought to them, and through such means, enhance their longevity. At Fighter Realm, even if one had reached Jizuan Realm Pinnacle or even half-transcension, surpassing the century limit was an extremely difficult task. But if one were to reach this higher realm, one's longevity could potentially be doubled to 200 years. Given that Ding Hong was still alive and kicking despite exceeding the 100-year mark, he must have made the breakthrough to become a full-fledged transcendent mortal expert. To think that there would be a transcendent mortal expert in Xianyuan Kingdom. There is a huge gap between the strength of a transcendent mortal cultivator and a half-transcension cultivator. Gongzi, should we help him? Jin Sohai asked grimly. Even though it was just a difference of a small cultivation realm, it represented the difference between a mortal and a transcendent being. How could the two begin to compare with one another? Zhang Xian might be able to defeat a half-transcension expert easily, but a transcendent mortal was definitely beyond his means. With such a huge difference in their level of existence, there was no way his fighting prowess could match up to Ding Hong. It was just like how the possibility of a human defeating a tiger barehanded was practically zero. Wait a moment first, let's see how he deals with this matter. We'll only help him when things look dire. Gongzi shook his head. The other party had defeated a half-transcension expert easily and stopped the Great Xianyuan formation with just a single finger. The means that he had displayed had piqued Gongzi's curiosity. He was interested to see if the other party had any unique methods to deal with a transcendent mortal expert. Besides, Jin Sohai was a person who had traveled quite far in the path of a transcendent mortal. With his strength, it wasn't difficult for him to subdue a prolonged longevity realm in an instant. Thus, there was no harm in doing so. On! Nodding his head, Jin Sohai turned his gaze back to the field below. Gu Mu and the others also anxiously shifted their sights. You're a master teacher, right? Can you sell me a favor and let this unfilial progeny of mine off? I'm willing to offer you 2,000 spirit stones in exchange for this favor. After a moment of hesitation, The deep and ancient voice echoed once more. 2,000 spirit stones? The breathing of the crowd hastened. The value of a spirit stone was immense. It was difficult to trade for a single one even with a massive sum of gold. Yet, the other party offered 2,000 spirit stones immediately. This was truly a generous offer. With so many spirit stones, one could buy up the entire Tianwu kingdom. To be giving away wealth equivalent to the value of a Tier 1 kingdom just to save Ding Mu, it was clear to see how important the latter was to him. Upon hearing those words, Zhang Xian was stunned as well. Even when he was at the peak of his wealth, he only had 15 spirit stones in his possession. He knew how valuable spirit stones were, and this 2,000 spirit stones would surely contribute greatly to his cultivation. That's right, 2,000 spirit stones. I believe you should understand the value of my offer. The elder spoke slowly and deeply. Besides, you have nothing to gain from killing him. Rather, you'll face my relentless pursuit for revenge then. You are a wise man, so I believe you should know what to choose. The other party's voice may seem calm, but it was laced with threat. If Zhang Xian truly intended to make a move, Ding Hong would surely step forward and kill him. Hearing the other party's threat, Zhang Xian clenched his fists tightly together. Zhang Xian loved money, and he was in dire need of spirit stones as well. However, he would never compromise his own principles for such material wealth. If he were to do so, how could he face Lu Chong when he finally wakes up? Kacha! With a slight exertion of force, his grip tightened and a crisp sound echoed. Before Ding Mu could make a single sound, his head tilted and he breathed his last breath. Putong! The corpse was thrown to the ground. You! Audacious! Not expecting that this young fellow would actually kill Ding Mu despite all that he had said, Ding Hong couldn't hold back his rage anymore. The restraint present in his voice previously vanished, and his bellow reached even the heavens, threatening to tear the sky apart. Walala! Hearing that thunderous voice, the crowd who was watching the commotion suddenly lost their balance and fell to the ground. The rage of a transcendent mortal caused even the skies to pale. This is bad. He should have just exchanged for the 2,000 spirit stones. Indeed, he's really doomed this time. That's a transcendent mortal. No matter how powerful he is, it's impossible for him to be a match for Ding Hong. An uproar broke out beneath the heavens altar as well. Clearly, they didn't expect Zhang Xian to kill Ding Mu either. Even more so, they didn't think that there would be such a formidable expert behind Xianyuan Kingdom. With just a loud bellow, he was able to make so many cultivators topple down. His strength was terrifying. Even though Zhang Shi had shown them plenty of miracles before, no one thought his prospects looked good. There was too huge of a gap between transcendent mortals and fighters. It was like a battle between a god and a mortal. There was completely no hope of victory. Transcendent mortal! Zhang Xian, I brought harm to you. Mou's face paled, and her body trembled uncontrollably. She knew that Xianyuan Kingdom was powerful, and without the strength of a Zhizun realm pinnacle, it was best not to cause any trouble here. However, she couldn't have imagined that the famous old ancestor who had rattled the entire kingdom during his time was actually still alive. And on top of that, he was stronger than he was back then. Putting aside the increment in one's strength upon reaching transcendent mortal realm, transcendent mortals could tap into the energy existent in the surroundings, making no fighter a match for them. As long as this old ancestor made a move, no matter how many aces Zhang Xian had up his sleeves, it would be futile. Master teachers had the ability to see through flaws, but it didn't guarantee their omnipotence. It was just like how everyone knew that the easiest way to capture a city was to destroy its walls. But without sufficient strength, could one do so? It was one thing to know the flaws, but it was another thing to be able to exploit them. Upon reaching transcendent mortal, one's physical attributes would have raised to a whole new level. On top of that, most weaknesses would be hidden as well. Even if one was able to find an opening, without sufficient speed and strength to get past the enemy's defense, it would be impossible to get to it. Roar! Just as everyone was anxious and worried about what was to happen, The deafening roar of a beast sounded from the depths of the royal palace. Then, a bolt of lightning streaked out from within, and a figure appeared in the aerial space above the heavens altar. It was a massive aerial savage beast with a length of 10 meters, and when its gigantic wings were spread open, it spanned a width of 30 meters. Thick scales covered its entire body, and the sharp aura it exuded was greatly intimidating. Steelback-winged dragon? Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up. Having read so many books on beast taming, Zhang Xian instantly recognized this beast that was at the pinnacle of savage beasts. Similar to the nightmare beast, it was a half-transcendent savage beast which possessed the dragon bloodline as well. However, this fellow was significantly stronger, and its nature was even more callous as well. It was already frightening that there was a transcendent mortal old ancestor in the royal palace. To think that there would be such a formidable savage beast on top of that. As expected of a conferred kingdom, Zhang Xian had truly underestimated the other party. A man stood proudly on the back of the steel-back-winged dragon. This person wasn't as old as his voice sounded, and he looked like he was only in his 50s this year. The aura he exuded felt as vast as the ocean, making it impossible for one to peer into its depths. Upon reaching prolonged longevity realm, one's aged body would also become younger as well. Even though this old ancestor of Xianyuan Kingdom was already beyond 100 years old, he didn't look as old as Zhang Xian expected. It's indeed him. Luo Qianhong's eyes narrowed. Even though he had never met this old ancestor before, he had seen his painting before. All along, he had thought that the other party was dead. Yet, not only was the other party still alive, he was still vigorous. I gave you a chance. It's a pity that you didn't grasp it well. Clenching his jaws tightly, Ding Hong stared down at Zhang Xian coldly. He doted on that great-grandson of his greatly. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made Ding Chong bestow him with the position of the crown prince so early on. Yet, this fellow actually dared to kill his beloved grandson right before him. Unforgivable. Boom! The voice reverberated from the heavens, falling down upon Zhang Xian like a plummeting massive hammer. Deng 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 deng. Zhang Xian felt a stifling sensation in his chest, as though someone had struck it forcefully. His face paled and he was forced to retreat several steps backward to ward off the force. A transcendent mortal expert was already capable of manipulating the strength of the world. It wasn't difficult for him to launch an attack from a distance. It was just like Su Shi back then. With a single sound, he made the gold-scaled lightning beast fall from the sky and dealt Liang Qiming severe injuries. Ding Hong's cultivation was not a match for Su Shi, and Zhang Xian was significantly stronger than Liang Qiming as well. Even so, he was still knocked back by the other party's words. The strength of a transcendent mortal was indeed fearsome. I didn't grasp the chance? Pardon me, but even if I could redo it, I'd still kill him. Driving his heaven's path Jinqi, Zhang Xian dispelled the pressure on him and glanced into the sky. Eye of insight! Lines of insight flowed within Zhang Xian's eyes as he tried to look into the flaws of the other party, but as expected, it was futile. At Zhang Xian's current level, he could only peer into the flaws of those at most a small cultivation realm higher than him, meaning a half-transcendent expert. His eye of insight was completely useless against a transcendent mortal expert at his current cultivation. Despite knowing that his ability as a master teacher was completely useless to him at the moment, Zhang Xian didn't panic. Without any hesitation, he turned to the Library of Heaven's Path. Flaws! Who? A book appeared in his mind. The other party was exerting pressure on him through his voice, and this could be considered as a battle technique of some sort. Thus, the Library of Heaven's Path was able to compile a book on him. Zhang Xian hurriedly flung it open and browsed through it. After a quick look, Zhang Xian's face turned grave. There were many flaws on Ding Hong detailed in the book, but given Zhang Xian's current cultivation, even if he knew of them, he still couldn't pose a threat to the other party. It was just like how even if an infant knew that the crotch was a man's weakness, putting aside whether the infant could strike it or not, even if he could, he might not be able to injure the other party. Zhang Xian's current strength totaled up to 50,000 ding, but wounding a transcendent mortal expert with such a level of strength was still nigh impossible. In other words, this was a hopeless battle for Jiang Xian. "Since you wish to die, I'll grant your wish." Seeing how this fellow still dared to talk back to him under such circumstances, Ding Hong harumphed coldly. "Roar!" The steel-back winged dragon immediately flapped its massive wings violently. So! The immense body of the beast swooped down as though an arrow released from a bowstring, and in the blink of an eye, it was already right before Jiang Xian, threatening to sweep across Jiang Xian with its dagger-like wings. Judging from the shrilling sound, it seemed that even metal would be torn apart under the sharpness of the wings, less to say, a human. Jiang Xian narrowed his eyes. While his Heaven's Path golden body Two Dan granted him incredible defense, he knew that his body wouldn't be able to withstand this attack. Who? Heaven's Path movement art. In the blink of an eye, he appeared at a distance several dozen meters away, thus dodging this assault. Roar! Missing the attack, the steel-back winged dragon immediately turned around in midair and darted toward Jiang Xian once more. Jiang Xian retreated once more. Having the same situation happen again and again, Jiang Xian's face turned grim. Even though the number of times Jiang Xian could use the Heaven's Path movement art had increased due to the rise in his cultivation, he knew that there was a limit to his stamina. If this went on, it would just be a matter of time before his Jinchi ran out. It's not a solution to continue dodging like that, but a half-transcension realm savage beast and a transcendent mortal expert. Zhang sure isn't a match for either of them. Indeed, Zhang sure is in a bad position. A tense look was on everyone's faces. Putting aside the transcendent mortal realm Ding Hong, even the steel-back winged dragon, placed second on the green leaf board, wasn't an existence that fighter realm cultivators could deal with. Putting aside its powerful defense and overwhelming offensive ability, more importantly, it was able to fly. No matter how powerful Jiang Xian was, he could only withstand its assault. After all, it was impossible for Jiang Xian to fly into the skies and knock it down. Will Jiang Shi be killed? Someone amidst the crowd asked. Jiang Shi had just helped him achieve a breakthrough, and he owed him a debt of gratitude. Yet, upon seeing that the other party was in a difficult situation, he wasn't able to do anything at all. Thus, he panicked. If Jiang Shi knocks the steel-back winged dragon down, there might still be a chance. But is that possible? Another person replied. The steel-back winged dragon was a half-transcension realm savage beast. Its aerial capability was its greatest strength, so how could it give up on it? The only possibility was for one to cripple its flying capability. But, even if one possessed sufficient strength to break through its nearly impenetrable defense, one had to be able to catch up with it first. In other words, the steel-back winged dragon was already in a position that made it impossible to lose. If this went on, Jiang Xian would only be killed. The crowd fell silent. They were anxious, but there was nothing they could do. You sure dodge fast. Let's see how many more times you can avoid its attacks. Since the crowd was able to analyze this much, Ding Hong, being a mortal transcendent expert, was able to do so as well. Sneering coldly, he stared at Jiang Xian haughtily as if he were looking at a dead person. So what if you could run fast? Can you exceed the flying speed of the steel-back winged dragon? You're right, I can't go on dodging its attacks forever. Jiang Xian abruptly came to a stop. Lifting his head, he said, Since that's the case, I'll stop dodging then. You'll stop dodging? Ha ha ha, accept your death then. Harumphing coldly, Ding Hong was just about to get the steel-back winged dragon to advance toward Jiang Xian when a sharp voice suddenly echoed from below. Moo! Putong! Before Ding Hong could react, his footing suddenly disappeared. Along with the steel-back winged dragon, he plummeted head down into the ground, raising a huge cloud of dust. Chapter 441. I'll make a breakthrough then. Complete silence. The spectators and soldiers on and below the heavens altar, numbering up to several tens of thousands, were all dumbfounded. With just his words, old ancestor Ding Hong was able to force everyone here to submit to him. The valiant sight of him entering the field on the steel-back winged dragon was engraved deep into everyone's mind. Everyone thought that Zhang Xian would be crushed helplessly, but before Ding Hong could even wound the other party, he ended up falling from the sky. The heck? Could things get any more ridiculous? For an expert like you, walking out from the royal palace wasn't a big deal. Yet you just had to put on a show and enter the field riding on the steel back-winged dragon. On top of that, you chose to fly at such a high altitude in an attempt to play God and bring heaven retribution onto others. Yet, retribution did appear, but the target seemed to be you. All gazes immediately turned toward the silhouette who was stabbed more than half a meter deep into the ground. Everyone's mouths were twitching, and they couldn't help but wince at the tragic sight. Even transcendent mortal experts were incapable of flight. Falling from an altitude of 50 to 60 meters unprepared might be insufficient to kill him, but it was more than enough to incapacitate him for a short moment. It was fortunate that Ding Hong had a strong cultivation. At that height, even a Zhizuan realm expert would find himself crippled. The steel back-winged dragon is a half-transcendent savage beast. Why would it suddenly lose its stability and fall from the skies? Recovering from the astonishment, bewildered exclaims echoed amidst the crowd. It wasn't like this was an untamed savage beast intentionally trying to cause damage. The steel back-winged dragon had already served as Xianyuan Kingdom's guardian beast for several centuries, and it was a respected guardian deity in the hearts of all the citizens. For such a noble savage beast to plummet from the skies all of a sudden and crash so heavily that it couldn't even push itself up anymore. Even though they had witnessed this sight with their own eyes, they had no idea what to make out of this matter. It seemed like that fellow dropped right after Zhang Shi released a bizarre sound. Indeed. I heard it as well. It sounded crisp and clear, reminiscent of the sound a cow makes, as well as a deafening thunder on the ground. To cause the winged dragon to panic like that. I wonder what it was. Some of the keener people who noticed the entire proceedings of the matter commented. The savage beast was perfectly fine a moment ago, but after that crisp call from Zhang Xian, it suddenly plummeted to the ground. Could there be a relationship between the two? While the crowd was struck by astonishment, old ancestor Ding Hong finally recovered and pulled himself out from the ground. He was so furious that he could explode from rage at any moment. He thought that as long as he killed Zhang Xian on the winged beast, he would be able to win the hearts of the people and restore ultimate power to the Ding clan. Yet never in his dreams did he expect to nearly die from a fall. If he were to become the first transcendent mortal to die from falling from too high up, he wouldn't have the face to meet anyone even as a ghost. Wiping away the dust from his face, he glared at the young man with reddened eyes. If looks could kill, holes would have appeared on Zhang Xian. Kill him! Glancing at the steel back-winged dragon which was still recovering from the impact, Ding Hong roared. However, right after he issued the command, he realized a hint of fear in the gaze of the winged dragon directed toward the young man in front of it. Putting aside killing him, it seemed as though it didn't even dare approach him. You trash! Ding Hong was infuriated. What the heck was this? As the bearer of the dragon bloodline, you always act so arrogantly in the royal court, disregarding everyone else. Yet you act so cowardly before an enemy? Can you be any more useless? Back then, you even slaughtered a spirit beast before. The other party is just a Zhizuan realm pinnacle expert. Ding Hong bellowed at the winged dragon several more times, but this fellow seemed to be adamant not to make a move even if it spelled his death. Suppressing his anger, Ding Hong turned his gaze over to Zhang Xian. To be able to persuade it not to make a move on you, I admit that you're a capable man. But since that's the case, I'll do it myself then. It's your honor to die by my hand. Ding Hong didn't know the reason behind the attitude of the steel back-winged beast, but it had to be a doing of the brat before him. But so what? The other party was just a Zhizuan realm pinnacle cultivator. Even if he could defeat a half-transcendent expert, he was still a huge way from matching up to a transcendent mortal like him. With the huge disparity in strength, no matter what aces the other party had up his sleeves, it was all useless. Boom! Harumphing coldly, old ancestor Ding Hong charged forward to make a move. With a thrust of his hand, rampaging Jinqi infused with the origin energy from the world formed a gigantic handprint, and it charged straight toward Zhang Xian. Spirit Lotur Battle Technique, Origin Energy Palm. Back then, on the back of the savage beast, the other party had used long-range sonic offensive means on him. Even though it was powerful, the distance had whittled down the might of the attack significantly, so Zhang Xian wasn't able to get a clear gauge on the other party's strength. However, at such close proximity, he finally understood how fearsome transcendent mortals were. In an instant, Zhang Xian felt overwhelming energy rushing toward him, causing his entire body to stiffen from the pressure. Under such a pressure, even driving his own Jinqi felt arduous. "I'll have to go all out." Transcendent mortal experts possess great control over the environment they were in, and knowing this, Zhang Xian knew that it was impossible for him to escape. Thus, he drove his Heaven's Path Jinqi to its maximum capacity, and faced the other party's palm with his fist. Heaven's Path Fist Art. Propelling the strength of his muscles, Jinqi began gushed forth from his fist. An immense strength exceeding 60,000 ding burst out as though a massive primordial beast tearing open the heavens, colliding with the other party's origin energy palm. Pung! Under the intense collision, Zhang Xian couldn't help but retreat 10 steps back. His face flushed, and he nearly spurted a mouthful of blood. Even though he had massively improved in the past few days, and his strength exceeded that of ordinary Zhizuan realm pinnacle experts as well, he was still far from matching up to a true transcendent mortal. There was no way he could remain unharmed from that blow. "You withstood the attack? Not bad. Let's see how much more can you take then." Ding Hong was astonished to see Zhang Xian survive his origin energy palm. It was no wonder that this fellow could defeat even Pavilion Master Luo Qianhong. His strength was indeed formidable. Even half-transcension experts would definitely end up severely injured under his origin energy palm. Yet, the other party was only forced to retreat several steps. On top of that, he realized that the other party's physical body was on par with him. A mere Zhizuan realm cultivator actually possessed a physical body on par with a transcendent mortal? How can that be? Boom! Even though Ding Hong was surprised, there was no hesitation in his movements at all. His next palm came striking down as soon as he saw Zhang Xian successfully warding off his first attack. Upon noticing the absurd resilience of Zhang Xian's body, he chose to exert more force this time around. Before the palm print even reached the other party, a huge fissure had already been torn on the ground. Origin energy palm is formed via the ability of a transcendent mortal to manipulate the origin energy in the world. Flaws. Number 1. If one only cultivates it to the level of an initiate, one won't be able to control it perfectly. The various flaws of the other party's battle techniques surfaced in his mind. The origin energy palm possessed immense might, but as a spirit Lotur battle technique, it was impossible for Ding Hong to fully comprehend it with his cultivation as a prolonged longevity realm cultivator. Even if he had studied it for a significant period of time, he would only be able to comprehend the basics. And in truth, he was a far way off from reaching consummation. The Master Teacher Pavilion had allocated various tiers of mastery for battle techniques, and they were namely, Novice, Initiate, Minor Accomplishment, Major Accomplishment, and Consummation. At Novice, one had a surface understanding of the battle technique and could forcefully execute it. At Initiate, one would be able to bring out the essence of the battle technique, but was still lacking in control. At Minor Accomplishment, one's understanding of the battle technique had already reached a deep level, and it could be relied on as a life-preserving means. One must know that most of the cultivators had only reached minor accomplishment in the mastery of their battle techniques. As for major accomplishment and consummation, without decades of practice, it would be impossible to reach that level. Ding Hong might have studied the origin energy palm for a very long time, immersing him into it for more than several decades, but due to the lack of a teacher and his insufficient cultivation, his comprehension of the skill was severely limited. Thus, he was only able to reach the level of Initiate. Initiate origin energy palm has a total of 17 flaws. Knowing that it would just be a matter of time before he died if he were to face Ding Hong face-on, Zhang Xian hurriedly looked for a flaw in Ding Hong's technique. The current him wasn't a match for a transcendent mortal at all. Only through exploiting the enemy's flaw was there a possibility of him retaliating. Found it! Suddenly, Zhang Xian caught sight of something and his eyes gleamed in delight. Who? He finally found a flaw that he could exploit. Without any hesitation, he immediately stepped aside, dodging the other party's assault, and with a flick of his wrist, he whipped out a spear from his storage ring and stabbed it straight toward the opening. Heaven's Path spear art. He had obtained quite a few weapons from the Lin clan, and most of them were stored in his storage ring in case of emergency. It was their time to shine now. That flaw was actually an opening in between the interval of the execution of the previous attack and the charging of the next Origin energy palm. His spear whizzed and stabbed forward like a valiant dragon. Formidable! That Zhang Shi's eye of discernment is indeed fearsome. On top of the back of a savage beast, Jin Sohai witnessed Zhang Xian making this pierce and his eyes narrowed. Despite being a transcendent mortal expert, even he was unable to find a flaw in Ding Hong's battle technique yet. For Zhang Xian to be able to find it in an instant, his battle sense was truly terrifying. However, it's a pity that his offensive power is too weak. Even if he augmented his strength with a spear art, it's futile. Recovering from his shock, Jin Sohai shook his head. Futile? A bewildered Gongzi asked. Since Zhang Xian had found the other party's flaw, why would it be useless? That's right. Placing his hands behind him, Jin Sohai spoke with a deep gaze. The transcendent mortal realm isn't as simple as it seems. 1. Unaware of the conversation of the duo above, Zhang Xian's spear dived swiftly toward Ding Hong's opening as though a roaring dragon charging toward its prey. Humph! Ding Hong narrowed his eyes and he hurriedly retreated. Voila! For a moment, the air seemed to have solidified. It was as though the spear was trapped in a bog all of a sudden, and its movement abruptly slowed. Who? The next moment, Ding Hong grabbed the end of the spear. Kacha! Exerting his jinqi, the phantom spear broke into countless splinters instantaneously. At the same moment, Zhang Xian felt an ache in his chest, and he was knocked back more than a dozen steps. Damn it! Zhang Xian clenched his fists tightly. He had found the flaw, and the spear was aimed and timed perfectly. Yet he was still unable to hurt the other party at all. Transcendent mortals were indeed fearsome existences. No fighter, even at Shizun Realm, was a match for them. You're indeed incredible to make use of the temporary lapse in between my attacks against me. I truly didn't expect it. Ding Hong turned his gaze over to Zhang Xian. It was impressive for a Shizun Realm cultivator to find the flaw of a transcendent mortal cultivator so quickly. If not for Ding Hong having reached transcendent mortal realm, he would have surely been injured by the previous attack. However, you're too weak. If your cultivation was at half transcension, I might have been injured just now. However, it's a pity that, at Shizun Realm Pinnacle, you're still a long way off. Even if you can find my flaws, what can you do to me? Ding Hong sneered coldly. As a show of respect for you, I'll face you with my full strength. You're right. Zhang Xian faced the other party's threat nonchalantly. He simply shook his hands and said, My offensive capability is indeed far too lacking. With the cultivation of a Shizun Realm Pinnacle, it's impossible for me to wound you. Since you said that I'd require the strength of a half-transcension, I'll make the breakthrough now then. Upon saying so, Zhang Xian flicked his wrist and threw something resembling a seed into his mouth. Boom! In that instant, it was as though he was set ablaze. Chapter 442. Making breakthroughs as though drinking water, reaching new realms like a walk in the park. The gap between a Shizun realm and transcendent mortal wasn't just limited to strength. Perception, spirit, and many other factors were included as well. If Zhang Xian remained at Shizun Realm Pinnacle, then even if he were to find all of the flaws in the other party's battle techniques and cultivation, it would still be impossible for him to defeat Ding Hong. No matter how many times he tried, the same scenario would just occur. There was only a single solution then: making a breakthrough. Since that was the case, there was no reason for Zhang Xian to hesitate anymore. He had already compiled and read through the Shizun Realm Heaven's Path Divine Art. The only reason why he hadn't made a breakthrough yet was due to the lack of spirit stones to augment his cultivation. If he were to attempt to make a breakthrough via absorbing from spirit stones, it would definitely take several hours before he could reach half-transcension. Even if he had sufficient spirit stones, it would be impractical for him to do so now. Unless he made use of that treasure, Crimson Flame Lotus Seed. This object was formed through countless years of accumulation of spiritual energy by the Crimson Flame Lotus at the vein of the Red Lotus range. It contained an immense amount of energy, to the point that it even raised the success rate of a fighter reaching Transcendent Mortal Realm by 20%. Since it was effective even on half-transcension experts, it wasn't too difficult to imagine how terrifying it was. The reason why Zhang Xian hadn't used it yet was because he was saving it for his breakthrough from half-transcension to Transcendent Mortal. However, he had no other choice but to consume it now. Boom! The lotus seed melted as soon as it entered his mouth, and a violent energy immediately flowed into his meridians. Propelling the energy according to the circulation method of the Heaven's Path Divine Art, Zhang Xian's aura grew stronger rapidly, and in an instant, he broke through his bottleneck. Zhizuan Realm Intermediate Stage. Zhizuan Realm Advanced Stage. Zhizuan Realm Pinnacle. He was originally at Zhizuan Realm Primary Stage, but as the Heaven's Path Divine Art greedily took in the energy flowing through his veins, in less than 10 breaths, he consecutively broke through 3 small realms, reaching Zhizuan Realm Pinnacle. That's his Zhizuan Realm. It would take at least an entire decade for one just to raise his cultivation by one small realm. Yet, in the blink of an eye, his cultivation rose from Zhizuan Realm Primary Stage to Zhizuan Realm Pinnacle? Is he still a human? How can this be? Ouch. What are you doing? I just wanted to check whether I was dreaming or not. Since you're the one who wanted to ascertain whether you're dreaming or not, why did you pinch me? Wouldn't I feel pain if I pinched myself? Upon seeing this sight, everyone fell into a frenzy. Their lips twitched uncontrollably. They had seen people making a breakthrough in their cultivation before, but consecutively within such a short period of time? Never. Others took several years just to raise their cultivation by one small realm. On the other hand, when that young man realized that he wasn't a match for Ding Hong, he immediately raised his cultivation realm from Zhizuan Realm Primary Stage to Zhizuan Realm Pinnacle. Can you get any more exaggerated than that? It was no wonder you dared to face the entire Xianyuan kingdom alone. With such capability, you can already bash through the heavens. Making breakthroughs as though drinking water, reaching new realms like a walk in the park? Gongzi's face paled, and his body trembled in agitation. He was the envoy of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, and having spent most of his time reading books from a young age, he knew quite a lot about the talented figures on the continent. However, this was the first time he had seen or heard something as absurd as this. To achieve breakthroughs in the midst of a battle. How in the world did he do it? The Crimson Flame Lotus Seed. But even though it harnesses a great amount of energy, it shouldn't possess such great effects. Gu Mu's eyes were also completely widened. He had obtained the Lotus Seed along with his senior granduncle at the Red Lotus Range back then, and he was given one of them. Thus, he was well aware of its prowess. Even though it harnessed a gigantic amount of energy, it was insufficient for one to raise one's cultivation by so many realms consecutively. That fellow seemed to be defying common sense. Is the other party mad, or are my eyes playing tricks on me? I've only seen this kind of breakthrough in a book before. It was said that a humble cultivator had once chanced upon the lecture of an 8-star master teacher out of some fortuitous coincidence, and he managed to achieve consecutive breakthroughs in his cultivation. To think that I would bear witness to such a sight myself! Jin Tsohai swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He was a transcendent mortal expert with a great amount of worldly experience, but upon seeing this sight, even he couldn't help but be shocked as well. If not for his powerful self-control, he might have fainted on the spot. Grand Elder Wei Yuqing's body stiffened in shock. The energy harnessed within the Crimson Flame Lotus Seed is violent and destructive, as though an ignited gunpowder. The moment it seeps into one's vein, one would have to drive the energy furiously around. With a slight misstep, one might potentially implode and die. Yet, to achieve so many breakthroughs consecutively without any hesitation, I can't fathom how deep his understanding of the Jizuan realm is. How confident does he have to be to dare to take such a risk? Also, what kind of cultivation technique was he cultivating to be capable of absorbing such a vast amount of energy in this short period of time? Achieving a breakthrough in one's cultivation wasn't just about absorbing energy. More importantly, one had to have a deep understanding of the cultivation realm, one's cultivation technique, and possess absolute control of one's body. To break through 3 small realms in a single shot, Grand Elder Wei Yuqing found it difficult to imagine how deep the other party's understanding of the Jizuan realm was. One must know that consuming such nourishment to attempt to achieve a breakthrough was a double-edged sword. If one was unable to drive the energy properly, the energy could potentially clog up at a certain location and eventually result in one's death. There were countless precedents of cultivators being unable to fully absorb the nourishment they had consumed and exploded. Even if the crimson flame lotus seed might be gentler compared to many of the other consumable treasures, its violent nature made it far from suitable for the direct consumption for a Jizuan realm primary stage cultivator. Yet, not only was that fellow fine after eating it, he even managed to achieve a breakthrough. What kind of powerful cultivation technique could allow a Jizuan realm primary stage cultivator to take in that vast amount of energy contained within it? And how confident was he in the cultivation technique to do so without any hesitation? Look, he's attempting to break through half-transcension. Just as Grand Elder Wei Yuqing was overwhelmed by shock, shock exclaims echoed from the bottom. Thus, he hurriedly turned his gaze over. Despite having broken through 3 small realms previously, that violent energy within Zhang Xian's body didn't fade. Rather, it seemed to be gathering strength to make that final breakthrough to half-transcension. He was attempting to surpass Jizuan realm with just a single crimson flame lotus seed. While everyone was overwhelmed with shock, Ding Hong nearly died from shock. When he said that only a half-transcension could hurt him, he was trying to provoke the other party so as to build a powerful reputation for himself among the citizens present here. Yet, that fellow really made a breakthrough, not to mention, it all happened in just a few short breaths. In his short, momentary days, the other party's cultivation soared from Jizuan realm primary stage to pinnacle, and from the looks of it, it was about to reach half-transcension as well. If he knew how frightening the other party was, he wouldn't have wasted so many words on him. Wasn't this courting death? From that fellow's sharp and precise movements, if the other party were to succeed, there would be a high chance that he might really breathe his last breath here. Attempting to achieve a breakthrough right before me? You must be dreaming. Roaring furiously, Ding Hong clenched his fist and shot it straight toward Zhang Xian without any hesitation. Phantom Pinnacle Battle Technique, Merchant Luo Fist. Spirit battle techniques were far stronger than Phantom Battle Technique, but given Ding Hong's cultivation as a prolonged longevity primary stage cultivator, it was nigh impossible for him to cultivate the Origin Energy Palm to the mastery of minor accomplishment, and thus, he was unable to bring out the full strength of it. In that sense, using a Phantom Battle technique that he had reached a level of consummation in was far more practical. Merchant Luo Fist was a technique created by a merchant from Luo Shui. Even though no one knew the true name of the merchant, the might of his fist, which was comparable to the ceaseless, rapid tides of a river, became a legend throughout Xianyuan Kingdom. Eventually, before the merchant's death, he passed this fist art on to the Xianyuan royal family, and it had been passed on ever since then. Xingqi began gushing out ceaselessly from Ding Hong, filling the entire heavens altar. For an instant, it felt as though an endless tide of water was surging through the area. Amidst the endless water, Zhang Xian seemed as though a solitary boat that could possibly capsize at any moment. Shameless. How can someone be so despicable as to launch an assault when the other party is making a breakthrough in his cultivation? And to think that he's a transcendent mortal expert, how shameless! Not expecting Ding Hong to attack at this crucial moment, the crowd suddenly exclaimed anxiously. It was dishonorable for a transcendent mortal to strike his enemy when he was defenseless, not to mention, the other party was a member of the royal family. Ding Hong's life hinges on a thread now. If Zhang Shi were to succeed, he would be put in a dire state. No one can blame him for making a move at such a crucial moment. Jin Sohai was infuriated, but he could understand the other party's stand. Once Zhang Shi succeeded in making the breakthrough, he would surely be defeated. In the end, this was a true battle, not a duel. Gongzi. Jin Sohai anxiously looked at Gongzi. Since he dares to attempt a breakthrough at this moment, he must have a countermeasure. Let's just watch on. Gongzi understood Jin Sohai's intentions, but he shook his hands and rejected it. The young man below had left him astounded time and time again. Every single time that he was placed in a desperate situation, he would reverse it in the blink of an eye. So this time. Would the same situation happen again? After all, without any aces up one's sleeves, no sane person would dare to attempt a breakthrough during a battle. Yes. Jin Sohai nodded and turned his gaze back to the battle. Then, his body froze before trembling slightly. Shit! He isn't trying to block the other party's attack at all. Below, Zhang Xian seemed to be completely immersed in his cultivation, oblivious to Ding Hong's fist. He stood perfectly still on the spot, allowing the rampaging torrent to drown him. Even though the merchant Luo fist was created by a merchant, it didn't feel crass or subservient. Instead, there was a dominance that threatened to crush everything that stood in its path. Being in the midst of his breakthrough, Zhang Xian was completely defenseless. If that fist were to land on Zhang Xian, he would definitely die on the spot. Boom! A loud explosion sounded. A cloud of dust flew into the air, and small rock fragments shot into the surroundings. In an instant, the young man's figure had completely disappeared from sight. Zhang Shi. Gongzi narrowed his eyes, and he nearly fell to the ground. Zhang Xian's turning of the tables time after time during a dire situation had already built an infallible image within him. Thus, Gongzi thought that, like many times before, Zhang Xian would do the same this time. Yet, the other party didn't do anything at all. On top of it, he was struck in the midst of his cultivation, when he was completely defenseless. Under that immense might of the blow, could he be dead already? After all, that was a transcendent mortal expert using his full might. Even a fellow transcendent mortal expert would find it hard to withstand the attack, lest be said, a Zhizun realm pinnacle cultivator. It's over. Wei Yuqing and Gu Mu also saw the sight before them turning dark. They were both Zhizun realm pinnacle cultivators, and putting themselves in the other party's situation, they could see themselves being completely crushed into bits. They thought that a miracle would happen once more. After all, the young man below had defied common sense too many times. No one could have imagined that he would be killed just like that. That's impossible. Zhang Xian, you can't die! Moyu's face paled, and her eyes reddened. Zhang Xian, aren't you going to save Lu Chong? How can you die here? If you really die here, how can you face your students who have entrusted themselves to you? You can't fall here. You mustn't. Ha ha! Attempting a breakthrough on the spot? Such a foolish notion! You deserve to die. Ding Hong also didn't expect his attack to work, and he howled furiously in delight. However, at the very next moment, a familiar voice echoed amidst the dust. Thank you for helping me break through my bottleneck! Boom! A powerful aura abruptly surged, and as though a flood dragon, it ascended into the skies, shaking the heavens. Half-Transcension Realm reached. Chapter 443, Strength of 100,000 Ding. What? Narrowing his eyes, Ding Hong saw the dust clearing, and a figure was slowly walking toward him. Who else could it be if not Zhang Xian? At this current moment, Zhang Xian was still in perfect condition, and there wasn't even a speck of dust on his clothes. It was as if the target of the previous attack wasn't him. But what stood out the most was the overwhelming aura he was exuding. Ferocious might exuded from every single point of his body. He was clearly many times stronger than before. Yo! Ding Hong's body froze. He had launched an attack with his full might, and he was certain that the attack landed on the other party. Yet, not only did Ding Hong fail to kill him, the other party even managed to achieve a breakthrough and reach half-transcension. This can't be real. As for Gongzi and the others who thought that Zhang Xian was doomed this time, they were completely dumbstruck. Was he a cockroach? How could he be fine after being punched like that? So what if you've reached half-transcension? Die! With eyes reddened with frenzy, Ding Hong clenched his teeth, flicked his wrist, and whipped out a sword. Then, he charged straight toward Zhang Xian. The reason why he didn't use a weapon before wasn't because he was intentionally going easy on Zhang Xian, but rather, he didn't think that there was any use for it. However, given that the other party had reached half-transcension realm and considering his incredible means, if he didn't give it everything he had, he would really die here. Voila! The cold gleam of the sword shone across the entire heaven's altar. Ding Hong had immersed himself within swordsmanship for more than 100 years, and he had already reached an incredibly high mastery in the art. With this slash, white sword chi gushed out from his sword, reaching a distance of more than several dozen meters, making it difficult for anyone to approach him. It's sword intent! Everyone's faces froze. Those who comprehended weapon intent had achieved an extremely profound level of understanding of weapons, to the point that their weapon felt no different from an extension of their hands. This was an abstract state, and it took countless years of hard work before one could achieve it. However, the benefits it brought were massive as well. One who had comprehended sword intent could be said to be invincible among those of the same cultivation realm. Not only has he comprehended sword intent, he's even advanced rather far in it. Jin Sohai frowned. Seems like it's not possible for Zhang Shi to achieve victory. If Ding Hong had used sword intent earlier on, Zhang Xian might have lost immediately. Even though Zhang Xian had managed to reach half-transcension, the situation was still against his odds. Sword intent was a representation of one's level of achievement in swordsmanship, and the strikes of those who have reached this level tended to be swifter and sharper. This Zhang Shi wasn't even 20 yet, and on top of that, he was a spear user. His understanding of the sword was probably far inferior to the other party. It would be nigh impossible for him to achieve victory. Gongzi, Wei Yuqing, and the others didn't speak, but every single one of them had a grim expression on their faces. Clearly, they shared the same thoughts as well. A transcendent mortal who had comprehended sword intent was a truly terrifying force to reckon with. Even Jin Sohai would face some trouble with him. Voila! A sword chi flew across the air, leaving a deep tear on the ground. Different from the anxious crowd, Zhang Xian didn't seem flustered in the least. He smiled lightly and stepped forward. His figure faded, and in the blink of an eye, he had already advanced 4 to 5 meters. It was as though he could foresee the future. His body moved from the left to the right, and the sharp sword chi simply slid past his skin, without leaving a single cut on him. At that moment, Zhang Xian seemed as though an agile fish. Even though the sword chi before him was spread widely like a net, he was still able to easily find an opening and slide through. Half-transcension is indeed powerful. Feeling the immense strength surging through his body, Zhang Xian thought. Under normal circumstances, it would have been impossible for him to reach half-transcension. Hall Master Xie Jiuchen had gathered a huge collection of Zhizuan Realm Manual under his request, but very few of them detailed the method to breaking through to half-transcension. As such, after compilation, a half-transcension Heaven's Path divine art couldn't be formed. This was precisely the reason why Zhang Xian stopped right after he had reached Zhizuan Realm Pinnacle. However, the energy within the Crimson Flame Lotus Seed far exceeded his expectations. He wanted to stop, but the violent nature of the energy prevented him from doing so. Thus, he was forced to continue striving for half-transcension. Under normal circumstances, without a compiled Heaven's Path divine art, it would be hard for him to achieve a breakthrough. It could potentially lead to his cultivation going berserk, and in the worst-case scenario, he might even sustain severe internal injuries. The situation back then was precarious, and Zhang Xian nearly lost control of the rampaging energy within it. And at that crucial moment, Ding Hong made a move. The strong external force that struck the Zhang Xian who was on the verge of exploding suppressed the rampaging energy within him. Not only was he fine from the collision of energy, he was even able to make use of this as an impetus to advance his cultivation. If Ding Hong hadn't made a move, Zhang Xian might have been severely injured from the rampaging energy of the Crimson Flame Lotus Seed. Even though the other party had intended to kill him, he ended up doing him a big favor instead. Thus, Zhang Xian's thanks before was truly earnest. But of course, if Ding Hong were to learn of it, he might have died out of anger. What the heck was this? If only I knew earlier, I wouldn't have been so anxious to strike. The thought disappeared as soon as it appeared. Entering the sea of sword chi created by the other party, Zhang Xian's fist struck out. At the same moment, lines of insight flowed within his eyes. Eye of insight. His eye of insight could peer into the flaws of a cultivator a small realm above that of his cultivation. Ding Hong was a transcendent mortal prolonged longevity realm primary stage expert, and thus, under the flowing lines of insight, all of the flaws of his movements and cultivation appeared in Zhang Xian's sight. Boom! The Heaven's Path fist art, augmented by overwhelming Jinqi, shot straight to the center of the sword chi. Damn it! Ding Hong didn't expect the other party to slide through the sea of sword chi that he had produced and to even throw a fist straight at him. His face paled, and roaring furiously, he twisted his sword and blocked the fist with the body of his sword. Ding! The fist landed on the sword, and a deafening metallic sound reverberated in the air from the collision. Ding Hong couldn't help but retreat 2 steps back. 100,000 ding? The strength of a 1 dan prolonged longevity realm cultivator? Ding Hong's face paled. Jizuan realm was known as the 10,000 ding realm, and it was representative of the level that a cultivator's strength finally exceeded 10,000 ding. After that, every small cultivation realm would add an additional 10,000 ding of strength. Thus, a normal Jizuan realm pinnacle would possess a strength of 40,000 ding. As for transcendent mortals, even though they had reached a level of existence and could draw energy from the heavens to augment themselves, there was a limit to their might as well. At 1 dan prolonged longevity realm, the limit of one's strength was 100,000 ding. Thus, it was also termed the 100,000 ding realm. If 10,000 ding represented Jizuan, then 100,000 ding represented transcendent mortal. The fellow before him was clearly just a half-transcendent cultivator. How in the world did he manage to achieve a strength of 100,000 ding? Initially, Ding Hong had been thinking that even though the other party had achieved a breakthrough, he would surely be unable to match up to him in terms of might. However, after taking a blow, he realized that he had lost this advantage. So what if your strength has reached 100,000 ding? Do you think that your fist art can defeat my sword intent? Don't even dream of it. Ding Hong clenched his teeth tightly. Voila! His sword began dancing about, and sword intent surged out as though a burst of light. In the blink of an eye, it wrapped itself around him, forming a flowing barrier. Shameless. Upon seeing the move, Gongzi harumphed. He's indeed shameless. Jin Songhai nodded. Making use of sword intent as a defensive measure. To think that a transcendent mortal expert would be forced by a half-transcendent to take defensive maneuvers. Ding Hong seemed to have given up on offense, choosing to focus entirely on defense instead. The sword intent had an incomparably sharp nature, and it covered the area around him entirely. No matter how powerful Zhang Xian's fist was, it was impossible for him to strike through the wall of sword chi. In other words, Ding Hong was afraid of Zhang Xian. He knew that it was impossible for him to kill the other party, so he chose to fight defensively instead. Transcendent mortals were respected even in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Yet, at this moment, one was being forced into a corner by a half-transcendent cultivator. Even though they were witnessing this sight personally, they still felt faint-headed. But even though other party had chosen to focus on defense, isn't Zhang Shi helpless before it as well? Wei Yuqing asked. Indeed, there's nothing he can do about it. The sword intent has covered his body entirely, and there are no openings to be exploited here. Unless Zhang Shi has comprehended sword intent as well, otherwise it'll be extremely difficult for him to break through Ding Hong's defense. Jin Songhai replied. Within the flowing sword intent was incomparably sharp sword chi. No matter how tough one's fist was, it was still made of flesh and blood. How could it face sword chi which was publicly acknowledged for its sharpness? Zhang Xian, you might be formidable, but there's nothing you can do about me now. Since Ding Mu is already dead, why don't we drop this matter? Having blocked the other party's attack, Ding Hong heaved a sigh of relief. He turned to the young man not too far away and said, the other party had killed his most beloved and valued progeny. Thus, he wanted to destroy the other party and restore prestige to the Ding clan. Yet, at this very moment, he realized that not only was he unable to defeat the other party, he might even die from the other party's assault. After a moment of hesitation, he decided to take a step back. Ding Mu was already dead, and he had many other progenies. As long as he survived, the Ding clan could still start anew. There's nothing I can about you? Zhang Xian shook his head. You're overestimating yourself. My sword intent is flowing around my entire body. Do you really think that your fist can break through it? Ding Hong sneered coldly. It's impossible unless you comprehended sword intent and face my sword intent face on. But do you think that it's possible? You must be joking. To comprehend sword intent, he had traveled across and lived in all kinds of barren and desolate lands for more than 30 years before he succeeded. On the other hand, that fellow wasn't even 20 yet. Even if he started cultivating from his mother's womb, how much could he have comprehended about swordsmanship? Furthermore, the other party had executed a spear art previously. Judging from his sharp and forceful movements, he clearly possessed some aptitude in it. Even though there was no limit to the weapon intent one could cultivate, there was a limit to a human's talent and energy. It was already incredible for him to bring his spear art to that height. To be capable of utilizing sword intent on top of that. Was it even possible? Sword intent? That's indeed not quite possible. Knowing the other party's thoughts, Zhang Xian chuckled lightly. With a flick of his wrist, a sword appeared in his hands. Sword intent is too mediocre for me. As Zhang Xian spoke, he slowly drew his sword. One. Before the sword was fully drawn, the swords by the waists of the swordsmen amidst the crowd began buzzing. It was as though they were paying respect to their emperor. Call of the myriad swords, roar of the dragons. This, the realm beyond that of sword intent. Sword heart? Ding Hong's vision turned dark. Chapter 444, Slaying a Transcendent Mortal. Sword heart was the state of driving one's sword with one's heart, controlling it with one's intentions. Every move made in this state could be considered as a sword art in itself. In contrast with it, sword intent was extremely mediocre and immature. It was like the difference between a weed and a towering tree. Ding Hong thought that with his sword intent, even if he couldn't kill the other party, he could at least force a draw and step down from there. Yet, never in his dreams did he expect that everything he did was only a farce to the other party. The other party's sword mastery was far above his own, reaching the level of sword heart. That was a realm that countless transcendent mortal dreamt of and dedicated their lives to, only to never reach it in their lifetime. Yet, a fellow who wasn't even 20 yet, and who had just barely reached half transcension, actually managed to comprehend it. When he mocked the other party for being unable to fly, the other party yelled and the steel-back winged dragon immediately fell from the sky. When he mocked the other party for being too weak to hurt him, in the blink of an eye, the other party broke through to half transcension. When he mocked the other party for his incapability to wield sword intent, the other party topped him with the higher realm sword heart. Brother, can you at least tell me what you aren't capable of? At the very least, I can prepare myself. Do you know how terrifying it is? Ding Hong felt his confidence crumbling. You're right, it's indeed sword heart. Chuckling softly, Zhang Xian finally drew his sword completely. His sword came from the Lin clan, and it was only at Phantom Intermediate tier. At the same time, it wasn't too sharp either. Yet, it had an indomitable presence. Sword chi flowed around its edge. With a slight flick of Zhang Xian's wrist, the air seemed to have been torn to shreds. Voila! Under normal circumstances, As long as one's strength didn't exceed him by too much, Ding Hong's sword and tent barrier would be hard to break. Yet, for some reason, as soon as the blunt-looking sword came into contact with it, the barrier immediately dissipated without the slightest resistance. Puha! A sword chi flew across, severing Ding Hong's left arm. It was so sharp that not even blood flowed out of his wound. The sword chi emanated by a sword master who had comprehended sword heart was indomitable. On top of that, Zhang Xian's strength also wasn't inferior to him as well. Even though the other party was a transcendent mortal expert, he wasn't able to withstand the attack. Escape! Knowing that he would surely die if he remained here, Ding Hong's face paled. He immediately turned around and fled. He had stepped in ferociously back then, but he ended up escaping with his tail between his legs. No one expected for the legendary old ancestor of Xianyuan Kingdom, a transcendent mortal expert, to meet with such an ending. It was truly beyond expectations. Incredible! To achieve a breakthrough at that crucial moment and slay a transcendent mortal, how valiant! This is how a man should act. From today on, Zhang Shi shall be my idol. Don't even try to steal him from me. This is what a true genius is. Compared to him, Ding Mu was nothing at all. The eyes of the spectating youngsters burned with passion. When Zhang Xian came alone to challenge the incumbent crown prince, everyone thought that he was being too arrogant, and they felt intense loathing toward him. But after undergoing his teachings via the impartation of heaven's will and becoming his half-students, their feelings for him gradually changed into gratitude. And at this moment, looking at him sending even the old ancestor of Xianyuan Kingdom fleeing, it evolved into veneration. A person single-handedly standing against an entire country. That is how a man should be. You all might not know, but I heard that the reason why Zhang Shi came after Ding Mu is because the latter had killed his student. How did you know? My cousin, Zhou Jin, is an imperial beast tamer serving the crown prince. He blurted the matter out when he was drunk. Standing up against an entire country alone to avenge his student, even going to the extent of standing against a transcendent mortal? On top of that, when he came, he wasn't that strong yet. How much courage must it have taken to make this move? With such a teacher, even if I were to die now, it would be worth it. Amidst the crowd, some of the well-informed ones spoke of the matter from start to the end. The eyes of the listeners gradually reddened, and they clenched their fists tight. The greatest fortune that a cultivator could encounter was a good teacher. Not only was Zhang Shi strong and capable at teaching, more importantly, he cared for his students. He stood up against an entire conferred kingdom alone just for his student. With such sentiments, he was more than worthy of being addressed as a teacher. While everyone was overwhelmed with agitation, on the heaven's altar, Zhang Xian's eyes narrowed as he noticed Ding Hong escaping. Do you think that you can get away? Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up, and exerting force on his feet, he immediately dashed forward. After the matter with Ding Mu, he realized the danger of sparing one's enemies. Since he had already fallen out with the other party, he had to clear them out cleanly. Otherwise, the one who would be threatened would be him. If not for his compassion back then, Lu Chong wouldn't have been sacrificed. Thus, he was determined to leave no more threats behind. Don't even try! With a flick of his wrist, Zhang Xian's sword sliced down. Tearing through 100 meters of space, a sword chi flew toward the escaping Ding Hong. After reaching half-transcension, Zhang Xian had already gained a certain level of control over the environment. In the past, the range of his sword chi was limited to only a dozen meters. However, with his enhanced degree of control and enhanced Jin Qi, 100 meters was no longer a problem. Voila! The sword chi struck the other party's back, tearing open a massive, glaring wound in an instant. Due to the long distance, the sword chi had dissipated significantly. Otherwise, it would have been more than sufficient to slice Ding Hong into two. Blood tribute! Feeling the sharp pain on his back, Ding Hong was alarmed. He knew that it wasn't easy for the other party to kill him due to the long distance. But if he were to be struck any more of that sword chi, he would surely die. Thus, gritting his teeth, Ding Hong burned his life force and his speed abruptly increased by a single fold. Like the blood tribute that Ding Mu used back then came from him, even though it allowed him to utilize strength and speed beyond his current cultivation, it had a time limit. After the duration, one's cultivation would automatically fall. It was a technique that hurt oneself as much as it hurt one's opponent. It was a move that wouldn't be used unless the situation truly called for it. Usually, Ding Hong would surely go after the other party if he activated the blood tribute to avenge his great-grandson. But this time, he was truly frightened by the other party. Every time that fellow looked as though he were going to lose, he would always make a shocking comeback. He was afraid of the means that the other party would continue pulling out if he chose to continue to fight. If so, once the blood tribute duration ran out, he wouldn't be able to even escape. So, with his hastened speed, Ding Hong disappeared amidst the labyrinth-like infrastructures of the capital. Damn it! Seeing the other party vanish into the shadows, Zhang Xian clenched his fists tightly. Even though he had managed to reach half-transcension, he had suffered quite a few traumas in the midst of doing so. On top of that, he had used the Heaven's Path movement art too many times previously, and he was already reaching his limit now. If he were to attempt to catch up, he might collapse before he could catch up with the other party. On the other hand, he had never learned any other movement arts before. Furthermore, his cultivation was beneath that of Ding Hong, so it would be difficult for him to catch up. There's no need to feel pity over this. That fellow has lost his arm, and on top of that, he even used the blood tribute. Even if he manages to get away with his life, his cultivation would definitely plummet. Based on my estimations, it'll be hard for him to even sustain his cultivation as a half-transcension. Thus, he's not a threat anymore. Zhang Xian was just thinking whether he should make use of these soldiers to search through the entire city to cut off the weed at its root when a voice echoed. Turning around, he saw a youth walking toward him with a bright grin on his face. He was around the same age of Zhao Ye, but his body seemed a little weak. His black eyes were gleaming with spirit, and his skin was smooth. All in all, he had an exquisite appearance. A woman? Zhang Xian frowned. Even though the other party was dressed in the clothes of a man, it wasn't sufficient to deceive Zhang Xian's eye of insight. This was an ability that only a 6-star master teacher had the chance to comprehend. It could even see through the hidden flaws of a cultivator, less to say, a cross-dresser. I am Zhao Feiwu, and I came from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Nice to meet you, Zhang Shi. The youth didn't know that her identity had been exposed, and she clasped her fists with a carefree smile. This youth was the Gongzi from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Just that, no one could have expected that he was actually a she. Envoy, thank you for your help. Upon hearing that the other party came from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, Zhang Xian immediately understood the situation. That alliance decree that declared Ding Mu's inauguration as illegitimate probably came from this person. Otherwise, he couldn't think of anyone else. The Xianyuan Kingdom has acted on their own whim, conducting an inauguration ceremony without reporting the matter to the alliance. I am just dealing with this matter as per the rules. Gongzi Zhao Feiwu smiled admiringly at the young man before her. Speaking of thanks, I should be the one thanking you instead. It's due to your treatment method that I was able to recover. Otherwise, I would still be lying on the bed waiting for my death now. Treatment method? Zhang Xian was stumped. It was the final question that Zhang Shi solved in your alias as Lu Qing on the Wall of Dilemma in the Tianwu Kingdom Physician Guild. I was afflicted with the illness, and my father had consulted countless physicians about the matter, but they were all at a loss. It's only because of you that I was able to make a full recovery. Zhao Feiwu said. The noble Gongzi who was cross-dressing as a male was the second princess of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance who lay sickly on her bed just a few days ago. Upon knowing that the one who provided the treatment method was a physician named Lu Qing from a Tier 1 kingdom, she immediately rushed over along with her subordinate, Jin Songhai. While passing through Xianyuan Kingdom, Jin Songhai received a message from Gu Mu and headed over to the Poison Hall. Over there, the two of them met Sun Chang, and upon learning that Lu Qing was Zhang Xian, they chose to head over to Xianyuan Royal City to assist him. Otherwise, given how the both of them were unrelated, there was no reason for Zhao Feiwu to favor a 2-star master teacher over a vassal-conferred kingdom, or even harboring the thought of sending Jin Sohai over to save him. Innate muscular deficiency? Zhang Xian also recalled the matter. Back then, he only solved the problem thinking that it was a necessity for him to become a physician. He didn't expect to save a person due to that. Furthermore, from the looks of it, this lady seemed to have a powerful background. Exactly. Zhao Feiwu nodded. My treatment method has saved you, but you have already returned the favor by helping me out of this matter. So, we're on equal footing now. Zhang Xian clasped his fist. Zhang Xian didn't want to owe a debt to anyone, as this could bring about a karmic cycle. Since he had helped the person before, in a sense, the other party's actions could be considered as returning the favor. Thus, neither of them owed anything to the other anymore. Equal footing? Zhao Feiwu was taken aback. Despite learning that she was the envoy from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, and on top of that, it was clear that she was expressing goodwill toward him, he actually shrugged it off, not demanding anything at all. He was truly a peculiar person. There were very few people who could resist this kind of opportunity. However, Zhao Feiwu quickly recovered and smiled. Let's do that then. However, you've killed the emperor of a conferred kingdom and driven away his old ancestor. How should we settle this matter? If we don't resolve this matter properly, it could cause a huge pandemonium. To think that the royal family of a conferred kingdom could be reduced to such a state, the inaugurating emperor dying and the old ancestor fleeing in a fluster. If other kingdoms were to learn of it, they would definitely make use of this opening. Zhang Xian was taken aback. He was too preoccupied with avenging Lu Chong that he failed to consider this matter. The current circumstances were indeed dire for Xianyuan Kingdom. If this matter wasn't resolved properly, it would be a matter of time before the entire kingdom falls into chaos. Actually, I have an idea in mind. Seeing the other party's hesitation, Zhao Feiwu's eyes twinkled and she smiled. Oh? Since you were the one who destroyed the royal family, I believe that no one would dare to raise any objections if you became the new emperor. This way, I'll be able to report the matter to my superiors as well, Zhao Feiwu suggested. The main reason why she had spoken her previous words wasn't to put Zhang Xian in a spot but to bring up this suggestion. In truth, she had already considered this outcome. Otherwise, she wouldn't have helped Zhang Xian. The person before her was able to stand up against an entire kingdom on his own. If he were to become the emperor, he would surely be able to bring the kingdom to greater heights. At the same time, she could return the favor as well. Thus, in her opinion, this was a win-win situation. Becoming the emperor? Zhang Xian shook his head. I'll pass on that. He had to reach 9-star master teacher before 30 to live on. The thought of staying here as the emperor had never crossed his mind. Not expecting to be rejected, Zhao Feiwu was stunned. An emperor wielded absolute authority over the territory he governed. It was a dream for countless people. Yet the other party turned her down without any hesitation. However, it's indeed my fault that Xianyuan Kingdom was reduced to its current state. Even though I'm reluctant to become the emperor, why don't I nominate another candidate? Zhang Xian said, after a moment of hesitation. But no matter what, a country mustn't go a day without an emperor, or else it would lead to social instability and various other problems. This wasn't what Zhang Xian hoped to see. Oh? Not expecting Zhang Xian to reject it and nominate another candidate instead, Zhao Feiwu stared at him with an intrigued expression. Nominating another emperor? May I know who it is? Don't tell me that you're going to nominate Sun Chang. If it was Sun Chang, she would probably burst into tears on the spot. That fellow was weak, yet he was exceptionally arrogant and boastful. More importantly, the words wise and astute were in a whole different world from him. If he were to become the emperor, Xianyuan Kingdom might fall into greater ruins. Sun Chang? How can that be? There's no way such a great talent should be placed in such a humble position. Zhang Xian shook his head. Sun Chang was his butler, and he was going to venture out into the larger world alongside him. How could he leave the other party behind in such a shabby location? Cough, cough! Zhao Feiwu choked on her own saliva. Truly, the attitude of the servant reflected the personality of the master. At the start, she thought that Sun Chang's boastful nature was an individual problem. However, after looking at Zhang Xian, she realized that it was impossible for him not to be boastful with such a young master. An ignorant Pixue realm cultivator becoming the emperor of a conferred kingdom, and you think that it's a waste of his talents. Can we still talk properly? Suppressing the stifling sensation in her chest, Zhao Feiwu asked. Then who are you nominating? Her. Zhang Xian smiled as he beckoned to the skies. MOU, come down! Roar! The steel fawn howling firmament beast in the skies howled furiously and swooped down. MOU immediately rushed up to Zhang Xian with reddened eyes, wanting to dive into his embrace. However, she hesitated and eventually decided against it. He had truly left her worried just now. However, she was aware that the other party harbored no feelings toward her. If she were to dive into the other party's embrace, that would truly be awkward. Her? Not expecting the candidate that Zhang Xian was going to nominate to be a lady, Zhao Feiwu was perplexed. Indeed, I want her to become the first empress of Xianyuan Kingdom. I wonder if it's acceptable? Zhang Xian chuckled. Empress? Xianyuan Kingdom's empress? Upon hearing Zhang Xian's words, MOU's body began trembling uncontrollably. Chapter 445, Raising MOU's Cultivation. Tianwu Kingdom's emperor, Mo Tianxue, had always been grooming his daughter to become the empress of the kingdom. Thus, even though MOU was still young, she was already adept in the process of governing a country. In that sense, she would become a much better ruler for Xianyuan Kingdom than him. Her? Zhao Feiwu was dumbstruck. She couldn't help but refute. Her cultivation seems to have only reached Zhongshu realm. Xianyuan Kingdom was a land filled with Zhizuan realm cultivators. A Zhongshu realm cultivator simply wasn't strong enough to stabilize the lands. Her cultivation is indeed a little too weak. However, to be able to possess this kind of strength at her age, she could already be considered as a top-notch genius. As long as she has sufficient cultivation resources in the future, it won't be too difficult for her to gain sufficient strength to become a powerful ruler in the future. Despite coming from a Tier 1 kingdom, MOU still managed to reach a high level of cultivation at her age. Once the resources of Xianyuan Kingdom were channeled toward her, her cultivation would surely soar swiftly. It wouldn't be a dream for her to reach Zhizuan realm pinnacle, or even half-transcension in the future. I believe in her talents as well, but what about the present state? The people's hearts are currently in turmoil, and if there isn't a sufficiently strong presence to hold things together, I fear that a calamity may occur. Zhao Feiwu was speechless to see how lightly Zhang Xian was taking this matter. Not everyone could become the ruler of a country. The primary requisite for it was for one to possess top-notch cultivation. Otherwise, who would be willing to listen to a weakling? Without sufficient strength, even if MOU were to ascend to the throne with the backing by the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, she might very well be assassinated by her rivals. After all, the seat of an emperor of a conferred kingdom was an incredibly prestigious one. There were countless people who had their eyes set on this position. Electing a weak emperor would only cause chaos and strife, and this would push the country straight toward the flames of destruction. Is that so? Knowing that his thoughts lacked depth, Zhang Xian scratched his head in embarrassment. Thus, he turned to MOU and asked, Do you wish to reach Zhizuan realm pinnacle? Of course I do. Even though MOU didn't know the significance behind Zhang Xian's words, she still nodded her head. Who didn't wish to become stronger? But could Zhizuan realm pinnacle be that easily achieved? Of the countless cultivators in the world, probably not even 1 out of 10,000 was able to reach that legendary realm. The difficulty of the matter was unimaginable. Zhao Feiwu felt perplexed when she heard Zhang Xian's words. What is this fellow up to this time? Good. Open your mouth then. Ignoring the onlooker's bewilderment, Zhang Xian flicked his finger. Before MOU could react, a lotus seed was shot into her mouth. It immediately melted into immense, violent energy which seeped into her meridians in an instant. However, her cultivation was still far too weak for her to bear such immense energy, and she immediately swelled up, nearly exploding into shreds. "Sit down!" Zhang Xian immediately commanded. "Yes." Not daring to hesitate, Mou hurriedly sat down. Following which, she felt a huge hand being placed on the top of her head. Boom! Dense, pure Jinqi seeped down her body, controlling the rampaging energy of the lotus seed. It guided the rampaging energy in a unique circulation pathway around her body. Kacha! 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 A series of popping sounds echoed, and Mou felt her body abruptly lightened. The bottlenecks which had kept her out previously was broken through in an instant. Zongshi Realm Intermediate Stage. Zongshi Realm Advanced Stage. Zongshi Realm Pinnacle. Half Shizuin. Mou's aura grew stronger at a pace visible to the eye. This. Zhao Feiwa's eyeballs were about to pop out of her head. She'd thought that this fellow was up to something, and she was right. Making someone achieve consecutive breakthroughs in the blink of an eye? Even the most capable 4-star pinnacle master teacher in Myriad Kingdom Alliance was incapable of such a feat. Are you still human? It was no wonder that Sun Chang stared at her with such disdain back then. Upon seeing Zhang Xian's means, she realized that there was a much larger world outside that of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. To induce a breakthrough in another so easily! Jin Sohai also felt a dryness at the back of his throat. He was a transcendent mortal expert, but he was incapable of such feat, and he had never seen anyone achieving such a feat either. Yet, the fellow before him accomplished it so easily, as though it was a walk in the park. I would like to know if there's anything you are incapable of. When did such a ridiculous monster appear in Tianwu Kingdom? This is way too frightening. Pavilion Master Luo Qianhong's mouth was also twitching violently from fear. If not for his strong mental fortitude, he might have turned insane on the spot. As a master teacher, he understood clearly how difficult it was to achieve that feat. To be able to achieve multiple breakthrough himself, Zhang Xian could be considered as a genius. However, to do the same for others as well, that was already surpassing the realm of a mere genius. This is cultivation impartation? A phrase surfaced in Luo Qianhong's mind amidst his trembling. It was said that formidable master teachers could design a cultivation technique based on their students' physique, and use their own Jinqi to impart energy into the latter to raise their cultivation. But to do so, there were several conditions that had to be fulfilled. Firstly, one had to be a 6-star master teacher. Secondly, one had to have absolute understanding of the student, be it the state of their meridians, their body's limit, and innumerable other factors. Lastly, the cultivation technique one designed must be completely compatible with the other party's physique. There mustn't be the slightest lapse in any of the 3 conditions, or else the other party's meridians could rupture and die. Yet this fellow did it so easily without the slightest preparation. On top of that, there didn't seem to be any side effects at all. Are you really a 2-star master teacher? Are you sure you are under 20? In an instant, Luo Qianhong felt that his time spent studying and understanding the master teacher occupation had been for naught. In the end, despite his efforts, he didn't seem to have achieved anything at all. To raise someone's cultivation so easily! My heavens, can anyone tell me that this isn't a dream? Idol, he's truly my idol. I want to acknowledge him as my teacher. Incredible! This is the means of a god. The soldiers who saw this sight were dumbfounded as well. They had seen geniuses, but they had never seen such a talented genius. In fact, the word genius seemed like a gross underestimation. Kacha! 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 Amidst everyone's shocked gazes, Mou's aura continued rising rapidly. Eventually, when it slowed down and came to a stop, Mou opened her eyes and a sharp glint reflected from within. Shizuan Realm Pinnacle, achieved! She had been cultivating ever since she was 6, and it took her 17 years for her to reach Zongshi Realm. She thought that it would take at least 20 years before Shizuan Realm would be in her reach. Never had she ever thought that she would succeed in just a few breaths. This rate of progression was like a dream to her. Thank you, John Sure. Knowing that it was impossible for her to succeed without the help of the person before her, Mou stood up and bowed earnestly. Her address also changed from Zhang Xian to Zhang Shi. Initially, she was still harboring thoughts of competing with this young man, hoping to win the other party's admiration one day. But at this moment, she realized that there was a world of a difference between the two of them, and this gap would only continue growing larger. It would be impossible for her to catch up with the other party. Putting aside competing and winning his admiration, she probably wasn't even qualified to become the other party's student. In the end, they were just passers-by in this vast world. It's no problem at all. Oblivious to her thoughts, Zhang Xian shook his hands. Then, turning to Gongzi, he asked, "Is it fine now?" After a moment of hesitation, Xiao Feiwu said, "She has reached Jizuan realm pinnacle, so she does have the qualifications to become the emperor now. However, it'll take more than that to win everyone's trust." While a Jizuan realm pinnacle cultivator was indeed powerful in Xianyuan Kingdom, there were many others of the same cultivation realm here as well. Just this by itself wouldn't be sufficient for Mou to stabilize the entire country. At the very least, she would require the strength of a half-transcension to do so. After all, those who were listed in the Green Leaf Board had all reached this realm. Jizuan Realm Pinnacle was just sufficient for one to be listed in the Young Leaf Board. That. All right then. Rubbing his hands, Zhang Xian turned to the trembling steel-back-winged dragon and said, "Acknowledge Mou as your master, and from today on, protect her and obey all of her commands." Ah? Hearing these words, everyone was dumbfounded. Even Mou and Zhao Feiwu were perplexed. "Are you speaking nonsense?" This fellow was the guardian beast of the Xianyuan royal family. On top of that, it was a proud bearer of the dragon bloodline. For it to submit to Mou on the first meeting. How was that possible? Roar! Just when everyone thought this massive fellow wouldn't agree to it, the steel-back-winged dragon smiled in delight and hurriedly climbed over. It began rubbing its massive head on Mou in an attempt to fawn on her. The heck? This. Isn't it being way too shameless? Everyone's body trembled violently, and they nearly spat out blood. As a proud bearer of the dragon bloodline, the steel-back-winged dragon was usually condescending toward humans. Yet, it fell from the sky with a call from Zhang Xian and abandoned its owner. Then, it even went on to obey every single command from him. Can you at least possess some dragon pride? You make yourself seem as though you're no different from a pug. How can a powerful savage beast like you act so shamelessly? This fellow seems to wield a strength that simply leaves others speechless. Grand Elder Wei Yuqing, who had just climbed down from the back of the savage beast, sighed. Somehow, this fellow was able to accomplish what others deemed impossible easily. Sometimes, one couldn't help but wonder if he was a high-ranked master teacher in disguise. Now that the matter with the kingdom is settled, it's time for me to deal with the master teacher pavilion. Zhang Xian turned around to look at Luo Qianhong with a composed look. For a master teacher pavilion to cover up Ding Mu's villainy against one of their own members, it was about time to deal with it. On top of that, if Zhang Xian didn't resolve this matter cleanly, his action of making a move against a 3-star master teacher would become a permanent blemish on his records. If so, it would be difficult for him to take the subsequent master teacher examinations. After all, master teachers prided themselves on their morals. For a master teacher to disregard the clear hierarchy and defy a higher-ranked master teacher, no one would be willing to see him climb through the ranks. "Are you certain that you want to crash the master teacher pavilion?" Zhao Feiwu asked worriedly. If pavilion crashing only consisted of fighting against the master teachers in the master teacher pavilion, there would be nothing for Zhang Xian to fear. After all, he was someone who could even slay a transcendent mortal. Even the strongest master teacher, Pavilion Master Luo Qianhong, was only a half-transcension. There was nothing for Zhang Xian to fear from them. Pavilion crashing is equivalent to challenging all of the master teachers that have gone through Xianyuan Kingdom Master Teacher Pavilion ever since its inception. Even though the location of this Master Teacher Pavilion is remote, it has several thousand years of history behind it. Based on the records, a 5-star master teacher and 3 4-star master teachers once emerged from here. Zhao Feiwu clenched her fists tightly. Even though they are already dead, their lingering wills are imprinted within the master teacher pavilion. To crash it meant to stand against them as well. Are you sure you don't want to reconsider the matter? If pavilion crashing only meant challenging the incumbent master teachers, there was nothing much for Zhang Xian to worry. However, the tricky part was the deceased seniors. Some of them had reached 4-star and even higher. As a mere 2-star master teacher, how could you stand against them? My mind is made up, Zhang Xian said. There was nothing for him to worry about. Those people were only lingering wills now. If they thought that he would be an easy target, they were about to be proven wrong. Chapter 446. The frenzied Mo Tianxue in Tianwu Kingdom. The head of the Shadow Squad clasped his fist. Your Majesty, Her Highness and Zhang Shi have arrived at Xianyuan Kingdom. On. Nodding his head, Mo Tianxue seemed to have recalled something inside. There's nothing bad about the lass except that she's too sentimental. Sigh, she has truly wasted all of the efforts I have spent on her. The rise of Mo Hongyi had left Mo Tianxue worried about the succession of the throne. As such, he had always raised his most talented daughter, Mo Yu, as the future empress of the kingdom. In the end, that lass, for her own personal feelings, decided to leave with Zhang Shi. This had left him both worried and helpless. The saying it was impossible to keep a daughter by one's side was indeed true. Zhang Shi was incredibly talented, and a person of his caliber couldn't possibly remain in Tianwu Kingdom for his entire life. Since there was no hope, she should have just given up on it. She could have remained within the kingdom to cultivate properly, and raise her strength to take over the throne. Mo Hongyi's prestige had been on the steady rise ever since he became a 2-star master teacher, and at such a crucial period, she chose to leave instead. When everyone has forgotten about you, how do you intend to inherit the throne? He had truly no idea what was going through the mind of that lass. Her Highness might be willful, but she listens obediently to your Majesty's words. She'll probably return after sending Zhang Shi off to the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, the head of the Shadow Squad said. As the head of the private elite squadron under Mo Tianxue, he was a close aide of the latter and understood his thoughts well. On top of strength, prestige was also an important factor for one's succession to the throne. The reason why Mo Tianxue was reluctant to allow Mo Yu to go with Zhang Xian was because he wanted to keep her by the side so as to have her come into contact with governance matters and achieve some accomplishments in the field so as to win the respect and loyalty of the royal court. Only then would he be able to pass on the throne without any worries. Yet she went ahead and left without even informing him. It was no wonder that he was angry. Let's just hope that's the case. Mo Tianxue smiled bitterly. If she were able to win Zhang Shi's heart, I wouldn't mind it. She would probably have a brighter future by his side anyway. However, Zhang Shi is an incredibly talented person, and I can tell that he has no such intentions about her. Even if she were to accompany him all the way to the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, it would just be a waste of time. The head of the Shadow Squad had no idea how to alleviate Mo Tianxue's worries. Even though he had never interacted with this Zhang Shi, he had seen him various times from the shadows and heard much about his affairs. A genius of that caliber belonged to the larger world out there, and wouldn't be tied down by romance. All right, let's not talk about this for now. Putting aside his worries, Mo Tianxue was just about to bring up another topic when an elder barged anxiously into the hall. Your Majesty, Your Majesty! That elder's face was flushed, and his entire body was trembling intensely in agitation. Elder Chu, aren't you responsible for keeping watch at the communication wall? What are you doing here? Mo Tianxue frowned. Elder Chu, whose full name was Mo Chu, was an elder of the royal family. Since the Lin clan had a communication wall that could contact Xianyuan Kingdom, naturally, the Tianwu royal family had one as well. Through this, they could communicate with Xianyuan Kingdom, understand the various changes in the other countries swiftly, and make appropriate countermeasures. This Elder Chu was the person responsible for maintaining contact at the communication wall. His position was equivalent to Pavilion Elder Qian of the Tianxian Kingdom, and he was the head of intelligence of the entire kingdom. This job required him to keep a constant lookout on the various happenings around the region, and thus, he would normally send a subordinate to report to the emperor. Unless something huge had occurred, it was impossible for him to report an issue personally. "Your Majesty, something huge has occurred!" Elder Chu exclaimed in agitation. "Something huge?" Mo Tianxu had turned to look at Elder Chu. "What is it?" "Zhang Shi has arrived at Xianyuan Royal City, and just today, he caused a huge ruckus in the capital and he killed Crown Prince Ding Mu," Elder Chu said. "Killed Crown Prince Ding Mu?" Mo Tianxu's face paled, and he nearly fainted from shock. The standing of a crown prince of a conferred kingdom was far above that of an emperor of a Tier 1 kingdom. To kill a figure of such standing, was that Zhang Shi insane, or was he simply tired of living? Indeed! Not just so, he even did it in the midst of Crown Prince Ding Mu's inauguration ceremony. As though oblivious to Mo Tianxu's darkened complexion, Elder Chu continued. "In the end, even old ancestor Ding Hong was alarmed." "By old ancestor, do you mean Emperor Ding Hong, whose name took the world by storm? He is still alive?" Mo Tianxu's body swayed weakly. 100 years ago, this Emperor Ding Hong had already reached the level of a transcendent mortal. Everyone had thought that he was dead given his long period of absence, but to think that he was still alive. Indeed. Not only so, he has even become a transcendent mortal expert, Elder Chu said. Transcendent mortal? Mo Tianxu's voice trembled. Then Zhang Shi. Mo Tianxu didn't complete his words, but the meaning behind it was clear. Zhang Shi was most probably dead by now. After running over to kill the inaugurating crown prince, how could the other party's old ancestor possibly spare you? Mo Tianxu knew this Zhang Shi quite well. He was able to defeat a half-Shizuan with the strength of a Zhongshu realm pinnacle, but against a transcendent mortal, the gap was simply too large. It was like the difference between a divine dragon and a measly ant. Most probably, Zhang Shi was already reduced to a lump of flesh under the might of the old ancestor. Oh, Zhang Shi is all right. He broke through the half-transcension realm on the spot and subdued Emperor Ding Hong, Elder Chu said. What? Mo Tianxu's head spun. To reach half-transcension from the cultivation realm of Zhongshu realm pinnacle on the spot? Are you joking with me? On top of that, there's a huge difference between a half-transcension cultivator and a transcendent mortal cultivator. How could Zhang Shi possibly subdue the other party? This is what the report from the other side of the communication wall said, and I've confirmed it myself. There's no mistake about it. Elder Chu nodded. On top of that. What? Elder Chu hesitated for a moment as he recalled the content of the report on the communication wall, and even until now, he seemed as though he was still unable to believe the news. The primary reason why I'm here is to report this news to you. After Zhang Shi subdued Emperor Ding Hong, he nominated Princess Mou for the throne, and she is now the ruler of Xianyuan Kingdom. The ruler of Xianyuan Kingdom? Mo Tianxu nearly fell off his throne. He had just said that Mou was wasting her time over her sentiments, and the latter went on to become the ruler of Xianyuan Kingdom. Did this slap have to come so violently? There were at least 20 vassal kingdoms like Tianwu beneath Xianyuan Kingdom. To become the ruler of such a powerful kingdom. Why did it seem like a dream? But yours cultivation is only at Tongxian realm pinnacle. How could she become the ruler of a conferred kingdom? Recovering from the shock, Mo Tianxu suddenly realized that there were some things that were amiss. When Mou left, she was only at Tongxian realm pinnacle. It was already difficult for her to ascend to the Tianwu kingdom throne given her lacking cultivation. To ascend to the throne with such strength in Xianyuan Kingdom, wasn't that no different from committing suicide? Zhang Shi also thought that her cultivation was too low, so he helped her achieve a breakthrough on the spot through cultivation impartation. Currently, Princess Mou is a Shizuan realm pinnacle expert, Elder Chu said. Achieve a breakthrough on the spot? Shizuan realm pinnacle? Putong. Amo Tianxue's body shook so violently that he fell to the ground. A dazed look was on his face, and he didn't even feel pain when he pulled out a fistful of hair from his head. Tongxian Round Pinnacle, reaching Hezuan Round Pinnacle on the spot. Zhang Shi, can you tell me how did you do it? You're sure has good eyes. After a long period of time, Amo Tianxue swallowed a mouthful of saliva and muttered slowly with a pale face. Chapter 447, Soul Oracle in the Master Teacher Pavilion of Myriad Kingdom Alliance. A gray-robed elder stood at the very front of a room. A warm voice flowing from his mouth drew in spiritual energy from the surroundings. Spirit-gathering diction, an ability that only 5-star master teachers possessed. Seated on the front rows of the room were elders dressed in master teacher robes. All of them were seated upright, and as the words from the gray-robed elder in front washed over them, they fell into a trance-like state. 1. The voice eventually came to a stop, and the gray-robed elder placed his hands behind his back. I'll be stopping here for today. If any of you have any questions, feel free to raise them. Hongshi, sorry for the trouble. I'm truly grateful to you for conducting a lecture here right after your long journey. Pavilion Master Kong stood up and smiled. Hongshi, Hongqian, was a 5-star master teacher from Hongfeng Empire. He was specially invited over to host the master teacher tournament. The gray-robed elder Hongshi nodded. It's the duty of master teachers to solve the problems that a cultivator meets so that everyone can become strong. There's nothing troubling about that. Yes. Pavilion Master Kong nodded. Just as he was about to continue speaking, the ground shuddered and a bell chimed 4 times. 4 chimes? Someone is crashing a pavilion? To think that I would meet with such an interesting matter right after my arrival! Hongshi chuckled. The different number of chimes of the bell held different meanings in the Master Teacher Pavilion. 4 consecutive chimes meant that someone was crashing a Master Teacher Pavilion within the territories of Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Even though pavilion crashing was equivalent to challenging an entire Master Teacher Pavilion, there were actually quite a few challengers every year. After all, success meant that one would gain great prestige and go down in history. Master teachers were public figures. On top of being teachers, their reputation was important as well. In order to raise one's reputation quickly, there were many who were willing to take the risk. But of course, despite the great benefits pavilion crashing could bring, the penalties for failure were harsh as well. Wu Shi, go and look into the matter. Find out which branch is it. Pavilion Master Kong frowned. He felt embarrassed that such an incident occurred immediately after Hongshi's arrival. Yes. The elder known as Wu Shi backed out of the room. Before long, he returned and reported. Reporting to Hongshi and Pavilion Master, it's from Xianyuan Conferred Kingdom. Xianyuan Kingdom? Taken aback, Hongshi raised his head and stroked his beard. I haven't been there for a period of time. My 3-star master teacher examination was taken there. Now that Hongshi mentions it, I do remember the matter. Even though you were only there for less than 3 years, you towered over all of the master teachers of the kingdom with your talents. Pavilion Master Kong replied after a moment of contemplation. Even though Hongshi had already become an esteemed 5-star master teacher of Hongfeng Empire, he originated with Xianyuan Kingdom, which resulted in his deep ties with Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone through the trouble to travel such a long distance to conduct a competition among the younger generation. Those are in the past now. But in any case, that person who crashed Xianyuan Kingdom's Master Teacher Pavilion will probably be in for some pain. Hongshi chuckled. I've left a sliver of my will there. Even a 4-star master teacher would find it hard to successfully crash the pavilion. You left your will there? It'll be nigh impossible for the challenger to pass then. For a moment, Pavilion Master Kong was stunned before a bitter smile crept onto his face. Pavilion crashing wasn't just about defeating all of the current master teachers within the Master Teacher Pavilion. The greatest difficulty lay in answering the questions raised by the will of the preceding generation's master teachers. Hongshi was a 5-star master teacher who possessed incredible means. Since he had left behind a sliver of his will in Xianyuan Kingdom Master Teacher Pavilion, who could possibly crash the pavilion successfully? Even Pavilion Master Kong himself, despite being the Pavilion Master of Myriad Kingdom Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion, would find it hard to succeed, not to mention a person from a conferred kingdom. Some youngster hoped to earn prestige quickly through pavilion crashing, but how can it be that easy? Nodding his head, Hong Shi suddenly recalled some matters about the Xianyuan Kingdom Master Teacher Pavilion and said, "In the Xianyuan Kingdom Master Teacher Pavilion, other than me, 3 other 4-star Master Teacher left behind their wills as well. To get to me, the challenger would have to pass their tests first. Those 3 tests are probably more than enough to halt the challenger in his footsteps." Pavilion Master Kong nodded. Just as he was about to continue speaking, the ground shook once more, and the bell chimed for 5 times consecutively. That person successfully crashed the pavilion? For an instant, everyone froze. From the start of the crash until now, it had only been 10 minutes or so. To defeat the will of 3 4-star Master Teachers and 1 5-star Master Teacher in such a short period of time. Wasn't that way too fast? Hong Shi was also stunned. "Hurry up and find out who it is." A moment later, his lips quivered and he hurriedly instructed. To answer the question raised by Will in 10 minutes and successfully crashed the entire pavilion. How in the world did that person do it? A huge commotion broke out within the entire Master Teacher Pavilion. Who? While a huge commotion was going on in Myriad Kingdom Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion, in Xianyuan Kingdom, Luo Qianhong was staring at the darkened Master Teacher Tower with a helpless look. There were various steps to pavilion crashing. Firstly, one had to defeat all of the Master Teachers in the Master Teacher Pavilion. He knew that there was no one in the Xianyuan Kingdom Master Teacher Pavilion who was a match for Zhang Xian, and there was no point in battling, so he immediately activated the Master Teacher Tower. Retained within the Master Teacher Tower were the wills of predecessors. To successfully crash a pavilion, one had to walk from the bottom of the tower to the top and extinguish all of the lights in the midst. Given that the tower was completely dark already, this meant that Zhang Xian had passed all of the tests and succeeded in his pavilion crashing. "Jia!" A young man walked out from the tower gate. Glancing at the young face which reflected an age below 20, Luo Qianhong shook his head. He had already guessed that the other party would succeed after his outstanding performance at the Heaven's Altar, but even so, he didn't expect the other party to succeed so quickly. Those were the wills from a 5-star Master Teacher and 3 4-star Master Teachers. To pass their tests in 10 minutes, even a 5-star Master Teacher would be hard-pressed to do so. What kind of monster was he? Since Zhang Shi has succeeded in the pavilion crashing, the Xianyuan Kingdom Master Teacher Pavilion will listen to your commands. Stepping forward, Luo Qianhong clasped his fist. The rules had stated that the losing side of the pavilion crashing had to fulfill the demands of the winning side without any complaints. "I require books and herbs regarding waking a dormant soul," Zhang Xian said. The reason why he caused a ruckus on the Heaven's Altar and killed Crown Prince Dingmu was to exact vengeance for Lu Chong. "Zhang Shi intends to attempt waking your student?" Luo Qianhong asked. While Zhang Xian was in the midst of crashing the pavilion, he had looked into the entire happenings from start to end. He felt great regret for listening to Dingmu's lies, and at the same time, he found himself impressed by Zhang Shi. How deep of a relationship between a student and teacher must be for a student to be willing to put himself at risk for his teacher, and for a teacher to cause a ruckus at a conferred kingdom and challenge a Master Teacher Pavilion for his student. "On!" Zhang Xian nodded. "Dormant soul. Honestly speaking, even our Master Teacher Pavilion isn't qualified to come into contact with information regarding souls. However," at this point, Luo Qianhong hesitated. "Pavilion Master Luo, feel free to speak your mind," Zhang Xian immediately replied. "I do know that if one becomes a 7-star Master Teacher, one will gain the ability to influence one's consciousness and search souls. Other than that, there's an ancient occupation known as Soul Oracle. If you were to find their inheritance, you might be able to learn their means and wake up your student's dormant soul," Luo Qianhong said. Zhang Xian frowned. "Soul Oracle? What's that?" Zhang Xian had heard the matter regarding a 7-star master teacher being able to search one's soul and rouse a person's consciousness from MOU, but he had never heard of a soul oracle before. Despite reading so many books and assimilating so much knowledge, there was nothing on this topic at all. Soul oracle is a unique occupation that existed in ancient times. I've only heard about this from the predecessors, but it's said that the soul oracles were able to summon and gather souls through celestial dances. However, this occupation has already disappeared for more than 10,000 years, and it's regarded as a mere legend nowadays. As such, no one can tell what kind of abilities they possess for sure. Luo Qianhong pondered for a moment before replying. It'll be easy for me to determine whether it's a legend or not. With a flick of his wrist, Zhang Xian took out a book and wrote a line of words on it. After which, he placed his fingers on it and muttered flaws in his head. 1. For matters that couldn't be ascertained, Zhang Xian would use this method to confirm its authenticity. There was nothing that could elude the eyes of heavens. Its words of guarantee were more reliable and useful than anything else. Casually flipping it open, Zhang Xian's breathing began to hasten, and his fists subconsciously clenched together. A line of words was written on the blank page: soul oracles can summon and gather souls, and the book compiled in the Library of Heaven's Path didn't indicate any error with the statement. In other words, it was right. To think that there would be an occupation capable of manipulating souls in this world. Suppressing his agitation, Zhang Xian asked, Pavilion Master Luo, do you know where the inheritance of soul oracles can be found? Or where I can find books regarding the occupation? As long as he gathered sufficient books, he would be able to form a Heaven's Path manual and learn the occupation. It didn't matter much to him whether the inheritance was complete or not. After a moment of contemplation, Luo Qianhong said, I don't know where you can find the inheritance of Soul Oracle. However, recently, there have been rumors that a soulless metal humanoid was found in Hawhai City of Myriad Kingdom Alliance, and an auction over it will be conducted in the next few days. The soulless metal humanoid is known to be a product created by soul oracles. If they have truly left behind an inheritance, you might be able to find some clues on it. Hawhai City? Zhang Xian frowned. A map of Myriad Kingdom Alliance appeared in his head, and he immediately located Hawhai City. Even though Myriad Kingdom Alliance was known as an alliance, it was actually an empire ruling over all of the other kingdoms in the region. The position of the alliance head was somewhat similar to the position of an emperor in a kingdom. Hawhai City was a large city within the territory of Myriad Kingdom Alliance, and its scale was on par with the capital, Myriad Kingdom City. Hawhai City is known as the trading hub of the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance. The soulless metal humanoid is known to be a special puppet crafted by ancient soul oracles to protect themselves at close proximity. Since one of them was found there, you might really find something there, Luo Qianhong said. While the chances of unearthing the inheritance of the soul oracles were extremely slim, it still beats searching and engaging the help of a 7-star master teacher. A 7-star master teacher could be considered to be a figure that stood at the pinnacle of this world. Putting aside how even the strongest experts of Myriad Kingdom Alliance had never met such a figure before, there was also no reason why a 7-star master teacher would go through the trouble of treating the student of an insignificant person like Zhang Xian. After hearing the other party's explanation, Zhang Xian made up his mind. Since I'm heading for Myriad Kingdom City anyway, I'll drop by Hawhai City to take a look then. Chapter 448. The Levels of Transcendent Mortal. A gigantic spirit beast glided through a sea of white clouds. From the back of this gigantic spirit beast, Zhang Xian glanced out of a window to peer into the distance. This transcendent mortal 3-dan spirit beast was Gongzi Zhao Feiwu's mount. Upon knowing that there was a clue to the inheritance of soul oracles in Hawhai City, Zhang Xian immediately gathered Zhao Ye and the others and left for Hawhai City. As Mou was now the Empress of Xianyuan Kingdom, there were countless matters on her agenda, thus making it imperative that she remains in the capital. Before departing, Zhang Xian instructed Luo Qianhong to take care of her. Initially, Zhang Xian intended to ride the Steel Fang Howling Beast to Hawhai City. However, after learning that it was over 1,000,000 kilometers away, he immediately dropped the idea. Given the howling firmament beast's current speed as a Jizuan realm savage beast, even if it were to travel non-stop through the day and night, it would still take at least a month for it to cover the distance. In comparison, Zhao Feiwu's transcendent mortal 3-dan mount was much faster. On top of that, its back was broad so it wasn't cramped even when the entire group was riding on it. Besides, Zhao Feiwu insisted on it, and Zhang Xian couldn't find any reason to turn her down either. To date, it was already the 5th day since they took off from Xianyuan Royal City. "Teacher, aren't you a poison master? Why did you become a subordinate of the Anvo?" It wasn't easy for Gu Mu to meet his teacher, so the duos started catching up. Gu Mu raised a doubt that he had been harboring in his mind ever since he learned of Gongzi's true identity. Poison master was an occupation that left others trembling in fear, and most would choose to keep their distance. Given such, how did his teacher become a subordinate to this Gongzi? "The reason why I left the poison hall back then was to exact vengeance. However, I fell into my enemy's trap instead, and even though I still managed to kill him in the end, I was severely injured in the process as well. It was Gongzi's father who saved me. In order to prevent others from learning of my identity as a poison master, I've been avoiding the use poison in public since then," Jin Sohai said. Just like what Gu Mu said, it was rare for a poison master to be subordinated to another. After all, even if poison masters were willing to be subordinated, considering their horrid reputation on the continent, who would be willing to take them in? After Jin Sohai was saved by Gongzi's father, he had been serving the latter by his side. To prevent others from learning of his identity as a poison master, he chose to avoid the usage of poison, and it had been several years since then. In the eyes of others, he was nothing more than a diligent subordinate. Little did they know that a fearsome 4-star poison master hid beneath that cover. "Teacher!" On the other hand, Yuan Tao and the others walked over to Zhang Xian. After consuming the spirit beast's blood essence, Yuan Tao's emperor's bloodline was further awakened, thus inducing a significant leap in his cultivation. With this, he caught up with Zhao Ye, who had been the strongest in the group with a cultivation of Zhongshe realm pinnacle. As for Jing Yang, Wang Ying, Lu Yang, and Sun Chang, Zhang Xian gave them a lotus seed each. Instead of raising their cultivation through cultivation impartation, he imparted them a simplified version of Heaven's Path divine art instead. Even so, their cultivation increased by leaps and bounds. In just 5 days they had smashed through multiple realms consecutively, thus reaching Zhongshe realm primary stage. Even though they were still slightly weaker than Zhao Ye and Yuan Tao, the foundations of their cultivation were strong and stable. More importantly, they hadn't even consumed 1/100th of the energy contained within the lotus seed. By the time they fully absorbed the energy contained within the lotus seed, they would be Jizuan realm pinnacle cultivators as well. Zhao Feiwu and the others suffered a breakdown when they saw Zhang Xian giving away the crimson flame lotus seed so casually to his students and subordinates to enhance the growth of their cultivation. However, as the shocks piled up, they found themselves gradually building up an immunity to his inconceivable actions and feats. To them, Zhang Xian was a person who simply couldn't be measured through common sense. Rather than racking their brains over it, they might as well just accept him as he is. "Hauhai City is right before us." Before long, a massive city appeared before everyone's sight. From their height, the countless buildings beneath the sun looked no different from gleaming small dots. The scale of Xianyuan Royal City was astonishing, but it couldn't hold a candle against Hauhai City. It was as though putting a remote mountainside village against a bustling city. As expected of one of the largest cities of Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Putting everything aside, just the large and refined infrastructures reflected wealth far above that of a conferred kingdom. Hauhai City is a trading hub where merchants from all over Myriad Kingdom Alliance, be it Xianyuan Kingdom, Chiha Kingdom, or Liusu Kingdom, gather. Goods tend to fetch a higher price here, so the merchants from the various conferred kingdoms would export their goods here to earn a greater profit margin. Over time, Hauhai City grew to become the most prosperous commercial city throughout the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Zhao Feiwu explained. Zhang Xian nodded his head. There was some information on Honghai City among the books of Tianwu Kingdom's book collection vault. Known as the City of Merchants, most of the trade and interactions among the vassal kingdoms of Myriad Kingdom Alliance were conducted here. In terms of prosperity, it even exceeded that of the capital, Myriad Kingdom City. Myriad Kingdom Alliance is of a significantly higher tier than Xianyuan Kingdom. Even though your strength has reached half-transcension, and you can be considered rather strong for those around your age, it's best for you to remain careful here. Zhao Feiwu advised with a grim expression. The Honghai City Master Teacher Pavilion has a 4-star Master Teacher behind it. Even though he's only a 4-star Intermediate Master Teacher, his true strength is at Transcendent Mortal 3 Dan Yinyang Realm, and he's not to be trifled with. Yinyang Realm? Zhang Xian asked. He knew that above the Fighter Realm was Transcendent Mortal, and that there were 9 levels to it. However, he didn't know the details behind it. There is a total of 9 Dan to Transcendent Mortals, and they are 1 Dan Prolonged Longevity, 2 Dan Origin Energy, 3 Dan Yin Yang, 4 Dan Clarifying Turbidity, 5 Dan Consonant Spirit, 6 Dan Cosmos Bridge, 7 Dan Perfect Harmonization, 8 Dan Ethereal Treading, and 9 Dan Chrysalis. Knowing that Zhang Xian was unaware of the details about the Transcendent Mortal Realm, Zhao Feiwu began explaining. You should already be aware of Prolonged Longevity Realm by now. While one's strength will remain at 100,000 ding throughout this realm, one's lifespan will increase by a fair amount with every breakthrough. The average lifespan of a Prolonged Longevity Realm Pinnacle Cultivator is around 200 years. At 2 Dan Origin Energy Realm, the Jinqi within a cultivator's body will be converted to Origin Energy, thus granting one the strength of manipulating the natural energy present in the environment. The beginning of another origin, the unraveling of a whole new world. There's a huge difference between Jinqi and Origin Energy. The former represented strength and one's existential potential, whereas the latter allows one to tap into the power of nature to actualize the mysticisms of the world. Take, for example, if an ordinary paper is infused with Origin Energy, it could gain spirit, enabling it to float in the air and dance by itself. Thus, Origin Energy Realm is also known as Mystical Energy Realm, in which Origin Energy equates to mystical energy. As for 3 Dan Yin Yang Realm, the contrasting nature of Yin and Yang energy present in one's body will amalgamate, complementing the flaws of one another to bring forth greater power. As such, Yin Yang Realm cultivators are capable of drawing forth incredible destructive might. Take that cliff in the distance, for example. A Yin-Yang Realm cultivator would be able to easily crush it with a single fist. Zhao Feiwu had a deep understanding of the various cultivation realms of Transcendent Mortal, and she began explaining them to Zhang Xian. Destroying a cliff with a single fist? Xingyang and the others were dumbstruck. They thought that the ability to hurl rocks weighing over 1,000 kilograms at Zhongsha Realm was already an impressive feat. There is a limit to a human's strength, and destroying a cliff with a single fist is far beyond the means of a human. That is already at the level of deities. That is also why the Transcendent Mortal Realm was known as the Divine Realm. The strength Transcendent Mortals possess isn't something that mortal fighters, or even half-transcension cultivators, can take on. And for Transcendent Mortal 4 Dan Clarifying Turbidity, as most would know, different cultivators will have different levels of purity for their origin energy, and different weights for their soul. Cultivate diligently in this realm, and one will be able to bring up the purity of their origin energy. In other words, this is an opportunity for one to purify their origin energy, Jinqi. I believe you should understand the huge difference between an inferior Jinqi and an intermediate Jinqi. Zhao Feiwu chuckled as she continued. Pavilion Master Kong of Myriad Kingdom City is a 4-star pinnacle master teacher, and his cultivation realm is at this level. Only one who has reached this level of cultivation can one tread fearlessly around Myriad Kingdom Alliance. As for 5 Dan Consonant Spirit, it's only hearsay for me. It's already beyond the level of Myriad Kingdom Alliance, so I'm not too sure about the details either. I see. Zhang Xian nodded. The 9 Dawn of Transcendent Mortal is similar to the 9 Dawn of Fighter. The progression through Transcendent Mortal Realm can be considered to be a layer stacking over the previous, and there are no shortcuts to it. The only way to advance is through ceaseless diligence and perseverance. But to Zhang Xian, it was just a matter of finding sufficient cultivation technique manuals to form the corresponding Heaven's Path divine art. We're here, let's alight. Amidst their conversation, they finally arrived at Honghai City. The spirit beast flapped its wings gently as it gradually descended to the ground. Just like the other cities, one needed to pay a toll fee to enter the city. Zhang Xian flashed his master teacher emblem and he was exempted from the fee. The broad streets of Honghai City were bustling, and one could see all kinds of objects being sold everywhere. Phantom pinnacle weapons, the strongest weapon tier among the possessions of the wealthy Lin clan, could be found easily in any shop in the area. Gold coins are technically useless in Honghai City. The currencies that are most commonly used here are tutelage jade tokens and spirit stones. Zhao Feiwu said. The tutelage jade token of master teachers are valued based on the rank of the issuer. A 4-star master teacher jade tutelage token is equivalent to 100 from a 3-star master teacher, and a 3-star master teacher's jade tutelage token is equivalent to 100 from a 2-star master teacher, so on and so forth. As for spirit stones, a 3-star master teacher's tutelage jade token is worth around 10 of them. One can use tutelage jade tokens for trading? Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. It was no wonder why master teachers were so well respected around here. To think that even their lesson time was regarded as a currency. Even if one wasn't interested in cultivating, there is no reason for one to shun money. But thinking deeper into it, it did make sense. The guidance of a master teacher could solve the various problems and hiccups that cultivators meet during their training. Putting aside 2 hours, even just a few minutes of guidance could play a pivotal role toward a cultivator's breakthrough. Given the value of these tutelage jade tokens, it wasn't surprising for it to be traded as a form of currency. After listening to Zhao Feiwu's introduction of Honghai City and gaining a deeper understanding of it, Zhang Xian asked, I heard that a soulless metal humanoid has been uncovered in this area. If I wish to find where it's sold, where should I go? A treasure as invaluable as the soulless metal humanoid would usually be auctioned by the appraiser hall. If I'm not wrong, it should be within the appraiser hall at the moment. Zhao Feiwu pondered for a moment before replying. Appraiser hall? Zhang Xian asked. Is it the guild for appraisers? Back in Tianxian Kingdom, Zhang Xian had once met a master appraiser. And Mo Yang. That fellow was only an apprentice, but he impersonated a master appraiser to scam others for money. And unfortunately, many fell for his deception. Even though appraiser was only a middle 9 paths occupation, due to their ability to determine the value of treasures, it was an exceptionally popular profession. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.